Greetings and welcome to The Black Room. This is the podcast for all things erotic mind control, and we are your hosts. I am Callidus, joined as always by Madam Kistulot. MK, welcome the fuck back.
Oh, it is so fucking good to be back. The world ended and we are still here.
That's not something that everybody, not everybody gets a chance to say that in their lifetime.
No, but it is oddly satisfying.
It is pretty good. I mean, prior to last year, my world ending was like, like the release of another Michael Bay film or something like that. And it's like, oh, I lived through the world ending again. And, now it's like, oh, I don't make that joke anymore.
Oh, no. Yeah, that is very true. Certain descriptors have changed entirely in definition.
This is true. What has not changed is the hotness afforded those in the erotic mind control community from some of the amazing talented people that you and I are going to be covering on today's show, as we tend to do in these shows. Let's go ahead and ask the question everybody wants to know. Are we talking about Core and Uzobono this episode, MK?
I think we have a slot or two. Wait, Uzobono, no, yes, we are.
It's like, wait, I don't see it. Oh, there's the pages. Yes. We are going to be talking about Uzobono. We're going to be talking about Core 14 and 15 because that's how long it's been, folks, since we have done an episode of this show. Is that 2 issues of Core, and I think at least 1 or 2 of the Division as well have come out, in addition to shorts that she's done.
Even using entirely new technologies, that's a whole new stretch.
Oh yeah, that we'll talk about that when we get there. But that's a great point as well. So anyway, yes, for those of you who are worried that we may not go an episode of the show without discussing Uzobono or Core, let me go ahead and set your minds at ease. We're going to be talking about lots of other artists, writers, and folks of the creative persuasion in the EMC community who have cranked out some wonderful, wonderful stuff for all of us to enjoy, and we're going to be pointing you their way, as we tend to do. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about us, because we're here, and no one knows more about us than us, so we are going to talk about us. And we're going to be catching up with MK on the myriad projects that she has going on and the amazing output that she is getting up to these days. She was just telling me about, her fingers are still attached, mostly, and
barely.
All that, but I mean, she's typing up a storm over there. And then I've done a little typing myself, and we'll talk about that as well.
Which I've had the fortune to get to see before most of the rest of you, so you all get to be really jealous of me right now.
That's exactly right. I'll take that. All right, so we're going to start off the news and highlights section. And I will kick this off. This is an artist. Well, actually, you were familiar with them too. As soon as I mentioned this, you're like, oh yeah, I think I know them.
Yeah, I didn't remember their name, but as soon as I pulled them up, I was like, oh yeah, you can't. They're too good to not be aware of them if you're paying attention. Yeah, totally.
So this is a 3D artist named Gingaslut 357, or I'm guessing it's 357 because obviously Magnum power. But Jinja has, you can find them in a number of places, but I would say the ones that you're probably going to want to look are going to be on hypnohub.net, Hentai Foundry, and then, of course, on Twitter. And we have links for all of this in the show notes, so if you want to go and check those out, you can find them at callidus-mc.com/podcasts. Jinja is a 3D artist, and just based on the style and everything, I'm guessing that they're in like Gary's Mod or this is like SFM type stuff. They're not animations. They're still
some of them has. I think they said explicitly they use SFM for some of their stuff.
Right, but there's a lot of video game characters and things like that. They're going to pop up, as you see in that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, their work spans a few different styles, but I would say that the thing that certainly got me interested is that almost all of it has a pretty technological bent to it. There's a lot of sort of fiendish brainwashing chairs and restraints, straitjackets, brainwashing helmets, eyes being held open, looking into screens. Jinja does have a bit of a thing for lobotomization, which is not strictly my, like, I I dig mindless, not brainless. And so it's not strictly my thing, but I guess I'm kind of saying that as a warning. Like, there may be some aspects of this not really your cup of tea, but the work is so good. And there is so much crossover with really specific things that I dig. Like, I'm that person that goes on HypnoHub, pulls up the tags, and tries to find, the brainwashing chair tag or the eyes held open tag. And there's only like 46 of those, and Ginja's got several in there because I love that stuff. So
good. And they've got the science tube thing going, which is something that I've I don't know if that's the actual official tag, but just like that's an aesthetic I've always really loved. And the fact that it's very all of this stuff, whether they're going the more the lobotomy angle or more just the brainwashing chair, it always has that feeling of industrial wrongness to it.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
You have to try to put there. It's not just there if you use the right prop. It's the backgrounds, it's the layout, it's the lighting. A lot of it has a sickly feeling, but it's less, oh, she looks like she needs like some penicillin or something, and more, this is wrong.
This is so wrong. Lighting is one of the things I was going to talk about. I think that certainly as anybody who's worked in 3D will attest, lighting is paramount. Being good at lighting and figuring out how to light models properly, and that's one of those things that once you get good at, the things that you can achieve, the apparent quality that you can achieve really goes up with good lighting, and Jinja's got really, really good lighting. This is a person who really knows their craft, and as you and I have talked about, it's so easy to get a copy of Poser and start moving sliders and things. Well, assuming your computer can handle Poser, but it's so easy to get one of these programs and start messing around and crank out something that is really, really blah. And the people who have dedicated the time to really, really get good at it and to crank out some of these amazing pieces, my hat's off to them. I always appreciate seeing this level of artistry, playing in our corner of the internet in the EMC community. It's really awesome, and these are super hot.
Oh, super. And the way that one of the things I think that stands out about a 3D artist is that since like most people that are making the 3D art aren't necessarily you don't have to be like the best model or the best texture, etc. Like you shouldn't have to be. It means you're doing a lot of reusing other people's assets, and that's really easy to do really poorly, especially when you're doing anything like fan work, where like you've got some work here that has like characters from like Final Fantasy, Hitman, Left 4 Dead, Resident Evil all in the same shot, but instead of looking like you've just got this like line of just disparate characters, because of the way they've properly brought them all into the scene, they probably properly lit them, probably set them up. If you told me they were from different games, and I didn't know any of them, I'd just kind of shrug and be like, they don't look like it. Right. And that I think is part of what stands out about what makes their stuff good, is that they have a good idea of composition.
That's exceptionally true. And speaking to the point that you made just a few minutes ago about just like backgrounds and the thing about it is there's so many people, and I'm going to say this, I don't mean it to sound insulting, but there's so many people who are really, really talented as illustrators, let's say, but they don't necessarily have a great grasp for visual storytelling. And that's one of the things that I think sets Jinja Slut 357 apart from some other people, is that they really do have a sense of visual storytelling. And I think that speaks to some of these aspects that we're talking about, what you were saying with backgrounds, the way that these pieces feel cohesive. They feel like a snapshot of a story that was going on that you just don't kind of get to see what happened before or after. But it feels like all those things are there just because of the amount of detail and artistry and whatnot that gets put in.
Oh yeah, no, and they do have a couple of things that like they've worked on more recently that sort of like play around with actually doing story, and it's all great. Yeah. So like I'm kind of hoping that they, even though they can just stand alone and grab two characters they like the look of and some background stuff, and it looks great. But I'm hoping they do more with the sort of longer form sequential art, just because I want to see more of that, because I'm here for the process. So if you're listening, Jinja, please more. You're good. You're great. Please.
As we often will say, more please. That's generally what we like to recommend. Anytime something's on the show, we like to give advice, and generally the advice is more.
Yes.
I'm going to call out, there's one specific piece, and ironically, this is not one that Jinja did themselves, but this was a commission they did for, or this is a commission that they got from an artist named Poser, Pozer. It's a 2D image, but it's a character from the Extreme Ghostbusters animated series. It's Kylie, the character from that, who is strapped into like this classic sort of like medical fetish, brainwashing chair with like the metal band with the electrical wires going through it on her head, and the calipers holding up in her eyes and everything. It's a really, really fun image that Jinja Slut commissioned, as I said. There's also a story that goes along with this, so I'm going to link this in the show notes as well, just because I think that this was actually how I found them. Like, I saw this, so it was posted by them. I was like, I got to go see more of their work, and that's when I kind of discovered, so this isn't their work, this is a commission they did, but their work is awesome too, because it's in this same vein. But there's a short story that goes along with this that's worth checking out and all that. So I'll throw that in the show notes as well, so that you all can check that out.
I'll have to give that a read. They have good taste, because Kylie's frankly the only thing I think anyone should remember from that show.
Yes. What show again? I remember Kylie, but the show is... See? Anyway. Moving on. What's next for us in the news and highlights reel, MK?
Next thing we've got is the Mental Block Wiki.
Have you checked this out prior? Because I just found it like a month ago. Were you aware of this? I
was not aware of it. When you send it my way to, because obviously we want to know what we're talking about beforehand, I started clicking through it, and it's got some stuff that I wasn't aware of on there. Yeah,
quite a bit actually. So this is a collection of, and there have been different websites like this over the years, different incarnations of this same idea, but essentially where someone is trying to create a catalog or a database of the various mind control scenes that come up in mainstream television, movies, comics, etc. And I just came across this one, as I said, in the last couple of months. I have discovered this and have really, really gotten into it, and just been going back through and finding, some things that I knew about, some things that I didn't know about. But there are really, really a lot of amazing things cataloged here. Okay, so like as varied as mainstream Western comics, Japanese manga, anime, movies, TV shows that you have never heard of. I mean, there's some really deep pulls in here. Like there's one, because especially if it's a TV show or something, I go and see if I can maybe find the episode on YouTube or find a clip or something like that somebody's uploaded. There's one of a Japanese show that was on, I think, in the early 90s, and it was about like 5 high school teenagers who were spies, and they would get sent on missions and things like that, because that's obviously a responsible thing to do with minors. And
always
there's some clips from an episode where one of them gets captured and brainwashed by the bad guys and then goes back and sabotages the team and all that kind of business. I mean, classic tropes. And I have not been able to find that anywhere. I mean, like that show barely has a Wikipedia page. It's such a deep, deep pull, but it's amazing. Just that sort of crowdsourcing knowledge aspect that wikis and similar websites can have. There's really, really some great stuff. So if there's ever anything that you've been looking for, or if you're just interested in seeing what's out there, this is definitely the place to do it. And although it's not the easiest thing to find, but if you can dig into one of the hits, like, just pull up an article about anything. Like, as an example, I pulled up Batman Hush. This is the animated adaptation of the graphic novel. But at the bottom of that entry, there's all these categories. So mind control, brainwashing, female hypnotist, hypnotized female, hypnotized male. And I've just been going through the brainwashing one, because that tends to be my jam. And you dig through just the brain, like there's 310 things categorized under brainwashing. I'm less than halfway through the list.
That's going to take a while to get through.
It is, but it's been fascinating. And some of the stuff is obvious. I mean, some of the stuff is, like Bionic Woman and Wonder Woman and Alias and those kinds of, so some of it's the old classics, Hawaii Five-0 and so forth. But some of it is really, really new stuff, and it's always fun to find new stuff. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite things that I found on here is there's an episode of an old animated series that I kind of barely remember, called Defenders of the Earth, and it was like Flash Gordon, the Phantom from the comic strips, and then a magician character, and they were up against Ming the Merciless, Flash's arch nemesis.
Yeah,
and I just barely remember the TV show, but there were a couple of mind control themed episodes and brainwashing stuff going on, and so just some things like that where I really have had that kind of joy spark thing happen when you kind of come across something that you do sort of vaguely remember. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, there's so much Sentai listed on there. There was so when you first go into the category section, like it can look like there's only 10 stories in there, or what is it, 8? Only 8 things, because the way the trending pages show up and then just categories, it can look like there's not very much in there. But if you choose category, it expands dramatically. But so like I click over on Kaze no Stigma just because it's on there and art style looks nice, and I realized wait, that's where those characters are that I've been seeing that same picture circulating for like 10 years at this point. And it's just, that's having that other half, like, here's this random thing, and I can find out about it. But also, like, anyone who's liked Mind Control has sought out so much stuff at this point, and you've definitely forgotten something. And this could be a good way to find something that you might have been trying to look for, but you can't just look for blonde and brunette looking mind controlled. One of them might be a maid. I think it's the blonde. Right. You're never going to find it.
It doesn't work. Well, as an example, one thing that people have told me over the years is I should check out the animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender. And some people, like some of my online MC friends, have said, "Oh, you should definitely check out Avatar. Like there's some mind control in a few episodes. You'd probably dig it." And so that was one of the first things that I was like, "Oh, I'll go track down, see which of those episodes are." And then because it's so serialized as a story, you got to I'm backing up a few episodes just so I can kind of understand what's going on leading up to this and sort of what the stakes are at this point when all this stuff is happening and everything. So in a roundabout way, it's kind of gotten me into going and checking out some things that I've been meaning to for years and just haven't really gotten around to.
Yeah, no, I would. Yeah, this is a great resource, I would say, just for finding random things, random ideas, and you never know when. Especially if you're creative, or if you just want something to randomly talk about, you're going to find something in here that's going to spark some kind of creativity or some kind of thought of, hey, I haven't seen this method or this medium used for a bit, and that could lead to who knows where. So
true. All right. So anyway, that is the Mental Block Wiki, a collection of mind control scenes in fiction. Check links in the show notes. What's next for us, MK?
The next thing that we have listed is Read Only Mind,
which is, if I'm reading this right, and I did visit the site briefly, but I haven't had a chance to really bang around. But this is sort of an alternative story archive to the venerable EMCSA.
Yep. It was put together by Dr. D and Ari. Both Ari hasn't been in a lot of the people will know her more from Tumblr. Ari he writes lots of short stories, and Dr. D posted It Rings for the Philanthropist. New Thought, I think, was another one. A lot of really good stories on MC Stories, and they both I don't want this to sound like I'm a ridiculous plug here, but they're both mods over on Mind Control Literature, the Discord that I've been running. And basically the thought was, personally, and this is not to insult what they've done, but just I look at the MCSA and I see at latest early 2000s web design, and I go, this is home, this is beautiful. Right. But more and more people will tell me it looks like it's old, it looks crappy, where are all the features? Right. And Simon every week has to put this stuff together, and I don't even know how he does it. Some people have told me how they theorize, but frankly, some people are still thinking Simon's 3 or 4 people, or maybe 5 at this point, or who even knows, because he's hidden behind a a curtain and we should never look behind it.
Right.
But the idea with ROM is basically you upload your own stuff, tag it, throw it up. People can comment on it. You can do sort of a thing like readers picks over on EMCSA, but it's instead of like a section specifically for that, it's more on profile pages and on the stories themselves. So you can sort of see a glimpse of like what people are reading. And because it's all user posted, there's stuff going up throughout the week. I admittedly just take a check on the weekend because I'm old habits. But you can also follow writers on there. So like if I post on there too, so like if you follow me, you can tell when I throw something new up, or Callidus, Modren. A lot of people that are posting stuff these days are over on there, and it's not by any means like, there's no attempt to like make it so MC Stories doesn't exist, but it's there also. And there's some stories like you don't need to hit like 1.5K to get a story up on there. So microfiction without having a bunch of it is easier to post onto there.
Right.
And because the tagging system was created, like thinking back to like 1996 when he first made the archive, there's no way he could have anticipated what the kind of tagging you'd want.
Right.
So the site gets to benefit from existing in a post AO3 society and is so much more flexible in those specific ways.
Right.
So like you want to quickly find the new FF story that came out this weekend. MC Stories will be faster for it. But if you're trying to look for DOM capitalism, that's a tag on
right.
Read Only Mind, and you can find it like that.
Yeah, well, and that's fun because there's certainly, as we've all experienced, I mean, there's definitely there's a good and bad aspect to that kind of stuff on the archive, in the sense that you really just have the synopsis and the tags to go off of, and sometimes you can get into the story and find out, yeah, it's got all the broad strokes that I like, but then in the specifics, it's not quite what I was hoping it would be or expecting it would be. And so that specificity that you can get through tagging and then as a reader, be able to go and see what else is playing in that sandbox. You click on that tag and see the other 10 things that relate to it. That's definitely an exciting prospect. And, it is one of those more sort of modern web convenience type things that is great to have.
It's also really great when you realize at 9:30 a.m. that you accidentally didn't fix the paragraph shaping in the very end of your story, and you're stressing and you're sweating and you're going, oh my God, Simon, I'm so sorry, but can you post this instead? And you can still do that. But also because of, and the uploading process is super smooth, by the way. You can just upload, like you can just have it upload files directly. I always copy paste my stuff in there because I'm a control freak, but it'll work with RTF, EPUB. It's beautiful for it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And you can set up stuff in advance. Like I have stories that are just going to be going live this weekend when we're recording, and it's just going to go off on its own. I don't even need to worry about it anymore. But if there's a mistake, I can go in there last second and tweak it. Whereas I did once send Simon an email at 9:30 a.m. on a Saturday, and he actually got it up in time. But that was, if he hadn't, it would be my own fault. Because that was not nice to Simon.
No. That's the thing. I mean, whether it is one person or several, as you were speculating, the job that Simon has done now and over the years, for going on 25 years at this point, it's remarkable, and it is. I don't know how to thank them other than to just say thank you every opportunity I get, because I can't imagine doing it myself. I can't imagine having the patience, the wherewithal, and just the ability to stick to something, just the consistency to do it year in and year out. But the Erotic Mind Control Story Archive has been the cornerstone of the community basically from the beginning, and continues to be to this day. And we definitely want to recognize that. And yet at the same time, I always welcome fresh ideas and new takes, and I don't see any reason why these can't exist side by side, because I think that there is enough of a space for everybody to kind of find something that each of these does well and to enjoy.
Yeah, no, and the flexibility on what works for some people, and like I know, like I wrote a how-to on this a while back, but I know that for some people it's very intimidating to send a plain text file off to Simon. Yeah. And while hopefully that's things like that file and etc. can make it a little bit less scary. At least there is always this, and just going forward, it's another option, and everybody should be able to check it out, see what they get from it, and hopefully we can all keep creating and getting to read more and more good stuff, because frankly, I need more. I always need more.
Yep. It's funny how often that comes up. That's a recurring theme on this show is more, please. I will take more. All right. And if you want more, definitely go check out readonlymind.com. Again, notes in the show notes, links in the show notes. So that's news and highlights. Let's talk, or that's news. Let's talk highlights. Let's get into talking about some EMC fiction, since we've been sitting here talking about where you can go get EMC fiction. I think MK, I think you and I'm trying to remember, I mean, I probably was not the first person, but I'm sure I was one of the people that started hitting you up a while back. I guess it's been a year or so ago now, to go check out this story by an author called SoVeryFascinated. That story was called Cat and Mouse.
You were the first, and I remember the exact message. It was, you were going to read this before the next time we talk.
That sounds about right.
What's hilarious, I feel bad that I have to say I still haven't, because I'm just the worst. I've read the other, like the more recent, but I'm a contrarian by nature. I can't even help it.
So,
but
yeah,
take it away.
Well, the point is that SoVeryFascinated is an author that only, I want to say 6, 7 stories maybe. Not a huge catalog, but really, really a talent. And as you and I often talk about, MK, sort of hoping to find those kinds of Trilby-esque, those Tabico-esque sorts of Iago and Thrall kinds of stories, those Eye of Serpent kinds of pieces that really play on thriller genre tropes, tension and anxiety, cat and mouse, ha 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 kinds of things. And SoVeryFascinated is definitely playing in that sandbox, especially with the stories that follow this pair of characters he has, Cat and Marissa. And there is a story that he wrote called Cat and Mouse from, I can't remember, 2019, I want to say.
Yep.
And that was a really, really amazing piece. And then that was followed up in November last year with a sequel starring those same 2 characters called The Cat Came Back. Now, since this one you have read, let's go ahead. Well, before we do anything, let's go ahead and give spoiler warnings.
Yes. There's going to have to inherently be. We can probably mention down in the show notes when you can skip to, so you don't have to be horribly spoiled by it.
Yes, you can. If you go to my webpage, you can always just look at the time index for the next section and skip to that. So, having said that, we are going to talk about this story, The Cat Came Back. If you want a little bit of a tease before we get into spoilers, why don't you pull up the exact synopsis? My synopsis is Cat goes undercover to catch a cult recruiter.
You're very close, because it's Cat has to go undercover to catch a cult recruiter.
Oh, I was close. So this story takes place, I think, maybe 6 to 8 months after the conclusion of Cat and Mouse, and plays directly into sort of those events and the, just like where the characters are having gone through those events and where they're at sort of in terms of recovery and that sort of stuff. So since I've read Cat and Mouse and you haven't, I'm very, very curious to kind of hear your take, MK, as far as coming into the story with these characters being new for you. What did you think?
So I'm terrible. And when I see a story is purple, I'll read it sometimes, but I'm a little bit more hesitant. I look for pink and I'll read it without even trying, which has led to me to plenty of disappointments. But it's just inherently where I go to, because even though I've read plenty of good stuff that's purple, I mean, you mentioned every single name you mentioned has written a purple story that I've loved. Right. So I really shouldn't be so discriminating. But I went into it with a thought of, I'm very curious about this, because Callidus has good taste. So what is SoVeryFascinated doing here? Or SoVeryFascinated doing here? And it's instantly I'm hit with these characters that feel even not having read the previous stories, I can tell that these are characters that they don't just exist in the story that I'm reading, and not just in that they had stories before, but they're living, they're going to be going on after the story is done.
Yeah.
And that inherently, like the interplay they have is just so absolutely adorable. They're just such a good couple, which really makes you feel when stuff's not going so great.
It's true.
And their focus, like when you come in on Stacy Kellner, this is where we're like, spoilers will be having basically after this moment, because that's paragraph 4.
Right.
But I can't really go beyond that point without doing some kind of spoiler.
Okay, so we're officially in the spoiler section. You've had your warning.
Like, you go from this, basically we have some setup. I feel so bad for basically every writer right now that takes their stories in the real world, because it starts off with a warning of, hey, this is happening on 2019, which I kind of wonder how many stories are going to have to either say that or like 2025 or what, because that shapes everything. But just you would right off the bat get this very strong sense of who Kat is, who Marissa is, and just they're very motivated. And even not like before they sort of do the breakdown of, oh yeah, we've been through some fucked up mind control shit, you already get a sense of these are people that very genuinely care and might not know perfectly what they're doing, because who does, but they're really doing their best.
Yeah. I think that you're spot on with respect to characterizations. They feel so real and so fun, and people that you'd want to know and be friends with. They're very, very evocative characters, and I'm sure that they must live in SoVeryFascinated's imagination in a very, very rich way, because they certainly live in mine that way as well. I have to say that one of the things about SoVeryFascinated's style is that I would tend to say that he is a sort of an understated style. Like, you're not going to find, like, as an example, like, you go and like read any one of my things, and you're going to find probably 5 different ways that I'm referring to the female sex genitalia in trying to describe, some sexy thing that's happening. And there's so little of that. Like, his stuff focuses so much on the eroticism of hypnosis, of mind control, the eroticism of falling into trance. It compared to a lot of things that I tend to read, it's amazingly understated, and yet the impact is profound. It's got so much power when dramatic things happen. It really is. It's really an exemplary piece of work. This and Cat and Mouse, I would point to specifically.
Yeah, no, and I completely believe it, because sort of I don't feel like I could go like sequentially through the story, but I feel like it'd be a really boring way to do it compared to the fact that like you've got this tension ratcheting up the whole time. Just every day, it's just more and more intense. But the fact that you can get such a powerful sexual description of a bowl or of cleaning the floor, like it's
mind-blowing.
Not just any writer can make you imagine someone on their hands and knees with soap, and like it's not even described sexy. It's just scrubbing the floor.
Yeah.
But that process, and that is why you want to read the story.
It's what's happening. So let's just, for people who don't really care if we spoil or not and want to hear, let's talk just a little bit. So the premise of the story is that Kat and Marissa have been through an ordeal in Cat and Mouse with mind control, and they've come out on the other side of that with this sense that they want to maybe try to help the world a little bit by combating people who are using mind control in an unethical fashion. And so that leads them to Stacy Kellner, and she was part of a kind of cult group. I think they're described as being in upstate New York, and they are working with her. They've been hired by her mother to essentially try and get her out of this cult. And that is the premise that kicks off the story. And as part of that process, they find out that this cult in upstate New York that they have a recruiter in Manhattan, a psychic, somebody who does psychic readings and past life regression, reads palms, those sorts of things, named Calliope. And that she has funneled quite a few people to this cult over the years. And so Kat and Marissa focus on her and decide that they're going to send Kat in undercover and see if they can basically come up with evidence that they can then hand off to an FBI contact that they have. And so right off the bat, the tension and the stakes, I think from a craft standpoint, it's super well constructed, because by the end of chapter 1, they already kind of have the plan in place. And so you know that Kat is going to be going in willingly to see a hypnotist who gets people so thoroughly under control that they leave their lives, they go up to, join this cult in upstate New York, never to be heard from again. And Kat's going to be basically placing herself in this person's hands and just seeing what happens. And they're taking precautions. Obviously, they're doing trance things to try to protect Kat and all that. But it immediately creates this really, really profound tension, because you just know all the different ways this can go on, and you know what the consequences of that could be.
And at the same time, there's a really beautiful, what's the right word for it? The contrast isn't the right way, but the way it's offset with the way that the way that she approaches Calliope. I can never pronounce names like that right. I was reading it Calliope because I'm just terrible. But I think you're right. It's Kelly. I'm not going to be able to say it right. She approaches her with the idea that she's been having this powerful dream that's supposed to, oh yeah, no, I buy into your dream. It's some kind of important past life experience.
It's a past life experience. That's the thing. She goes to Calliope saying, I think I'm having a past life experience. And that's how she kind of gets in the door. Yeah.
And the story you have going through that is very clearly, from the outset, is programmed into her head by Marissa, so they can use this to string her along to sort of have a story that's accurate but not accurate, so that Kat can be giving up stuff without giving up her social security number. And that story that's in this story that's so full of tension that week to week as it was being released, I'm just clenched the whole damn time. The story in that story is fucking adorable. It is just genuinely just sweet and dorky cute.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of, I haven't read a lot of this genre, so I'm going to say it reminds me of it and then potentially be proven completely wrong. But what it calls to mind for me, the story that Kat tells Calliope of this past life regression, is that she's had this dream, and in the dream, it's about a woman and her boyfriend in the 50s or maybe the early 60s or something, but they go to a sock hop dance. And at the dance, the girl who I forget the character's name from the dream, but she meets another girl who is very much the bad girl. She's wise to the establishment. She's outside smoking cigarettes and talking about revolution and that kind of thing. And so of course, the main character in the dream is crushing on this girl tremendously, and so a lot of the dream is about her trying to kind of get away from her boyfriend and go and be with this girl. And it almost reminds me of those lesbian erotica pulp novels.
Yes.
That's what it calls to mind for me. And like I said, I haven't read a lot of those, so I don't know if that's really an apt comparison, except that this one doesn't sort of have those terrible endings where by the end of the story, both women realize that there was a good reason their love was forbidden, and so now they go off to, become baby farms to their husbands or whatever.
I am so glad that people could just write those stories straight now. But no, you're straight. But no, you're totally right. It has that feeling of a cutesy, silly, very fluffy pulp. But it's offset with this story where you're just clenched every day because it's what horrible thing is going to happen to this woman that I want to see succeed, because she's risking her life basically for people she's never met, because she wants to do something good, and because the thing that's sort of before that is that Kat and Marissa clearly have some hypnotic hijinks of their own they would like to be getting up to, but they're distanced to it because their relationship with it is toxic from all the shit they've been through.
Right. It's really, really tremendous. I have to say that the place that the characters are in at the beginning of this story, and then what happens to them over the course of this story, is some of the best drama I think I've ever read on the archive. I am so invested in the characters and what happens to them And that's real testament to what So Very Fascinated has been able to do with them. One thing that I want to point out as a device, and I'll go ahead and say this now, I am going to steal this hook, line, and sinker at some point. But one of the things that I thought was incredibly well done in this story is the chapters. And you've mentioned this a couple times, like every day, you're tensing over something. And this story isn't like part 1, part 2, part 3. It's day 0, day 1. But then what's really, really interesting is it starts skipping around after day 2. So, I think the first update was day 0 and day 1.
Yeah.
Or no, they were a week apart. I'm wrong.
No.
Okay. So day 0 is first update, day 1 is the second, the third update is day 2, and then the fourth update, it skips to day 5. And I have to tell you that when I pulled that up on the archive and I saw day 5 and I was like, because your imagination can just go bonkers at that point, thinking about all the things that happened on day 3 and 4. And with your imagination filling in all those blanks and think about all the insidious things that Calliope may have done to get Cat under her thumb in that time. And then you check in with day 5 and the beginning of the day 5 chapter is not encouraging. Like everything that's happening, you think like, okay, they're undercover, like they've got this under the control, or they think they've got this under control, but everything that Cat's going through is telling you that she is slipping deeper and deeper and deeper, and at some point she's not going to be able to climb out. The anxiety that I experienced reading this story, I think is unmatched by anything else.
It is. The archives had a lot of good anxiety, which I'm going to be bringing up again later on, but like this is definitely just, as a little spoiler for looking ahead, but like, no, this is up there with I don't know if it's as like, stories are always a reflection of, the time and the place and the people that are writing them. Yeah. And the way that So Very Fascinating can capture this feeling of just, it's such an inevitability. It's not just, oh, this process is happening. It's like you said, you skip and it just seems inevitable at that point. And that crushing inevitability of when is this horrible thing going to happen? Is it going to be day 6? Was it day 3 when we didn't see it?
Mm-hmm.
And just, it's fucking brilliant.
Yeah, and there's the other thing about skipping ahead, skipping from day 2 to 5, skipping from 5 to 8, that sort of thing. The other thing about that is, and I don't think he does that in this story, but it's something, again, when I steal this idea for, going by day and then skipping around.
Yeah.
It occurs to me that it gives you the ability to look backwards into day 3 and 4 through the lens of an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
And that would just allow you to plant all kinds of traps and false leads and things like that. Like there's so much to be explored there. I think that this is the first story that I've read that's done this sort of technique as far as marking time. And it seems like it's a simple idea, but I keep using the word effective. I thought it was so effective in creating, as you so brilliantly put it, that crushing inevitability, that feeling that this is going to go wrong and it's only a matter of when. That sense of the story is one of its most powerful aspects.
It definitely is. And the little bits where we get to see, peeks back to their initial lead, trying to find out more, and that doesn't lead anywhere good. And just, there's so much good build up. The only, and I don't want to say this like horribly rudely, because this story it's still super good. It's still super should be read. I have no qualms with that. The only problem is when you have a build up this good, you really need to use it. And I feel like it slips a little bit from what I was hoping for.
Yeah, I have to say that I remember the last update to the story, which is day 9. And I remember when it went up to the archive, most of the others are like the first update was almost 9,000 words. And then the others were generally between 5,000 and 6,000.
Yeah.
And when I saw that the day 9 update, I remember the weekend that went up, and it was only 3,600 words. And I thought, that's either a very good thing or a very bad thing. And what I was thinking in my mind is either there's a huge cliffhanger that happens in this. Like, this is a short update, and then it's a huge cliffhanger, and then we see the conclusion next time, or this is it. This is the end of the story. And I tell you, the issue is that because this story does such a good job of involving your imagination, and you've spent so much time imagining all of the different places that it could go, when it doesn't go in any of those directions, it is a bit of a letdown. And the only thing that I want to say in terms of a critique is that, for my money, the story ended too soon. It was building to such a tremendous crescendo, and it feels like before it got there, somebody, pulled the plug on the power, and the band just had to finish up and be done. That's kind of how it feels.
Part of me almost wonders, thinking about it now, because we have hindsight of all these months and months and months later, is that there's and I feel really bad bringing back up certain authors over and over again, but it'll make sense. So I'm not just doing this to do it, because I love Trilby, but I'm not doing this to be rude. There's a Trilby story that I often come back to in my brain, Changeling, which after a certain point constantly goes back and forth between the present and the character's time on the island of Dormignon is how I always call it. So I apologize if that's completely wrong.
Right.
But the island where she'd had all these hypnotic experiences. And a part of me almost wonders, because you sort of have a situation like that with The Cat Came Back, where it's alternating between the modern day and the very much, like, I hope these quotes are visible, past life regression.
Yeah. And
the past life regression wraps up beautifully in this. Like, half of the story, it has the payoff, the setup, does the setup, payoff, beautiful, no complaints. That part is all perfect, and their relationship is all perfect. You get to see them competent. You get to see how it all worked. No complaints there.
Yeah.
But because that wraps up there, I almost wonder if, because there wasn't more to that story that it was married to, if there wasn't an issue with having more of the A plot, because the B plot, which is what you consider which, is very much up to you.
Right.
The fact that you have this twisted mind control going on, but it's paralleled with this super sweet story. If there wasn't more of that super sweet story, I almost wonder if you couldn't keep it going because you didn't have something else to bounce off of.
That's an excellent point. That's a really, really excellent point. I had not considered that at all.
That's literally me right now, to be honest.
Right. In my mind, I look at the last update to this came out December 12th. And I think I even said to you at the time when we were talking about it, I said, I wonder if it's one of those things where they just realized, I've got the holidays coming up, I've got, vacation, I got to do this, I got to do that. This story's got to be over this weekend, because otherwise I'm just not going to have time to get back to it. Who knows whether it's storycraft stuff or just practical stuff. Who knows what may have led to it being like it is. But I guess that, in a sense, and if SoVeryFascinated hears this, I don't know if it will seem like much consolation, but in a sense, it is kind of a backhanded compliment, in that the greatest and most fervent complaint that I have with this story is that I just wanted it. I just wanted another 7,000 words or so. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just wanted more.
Yeah, like when we were both discussing, what are we going to talk about? What have we read that's just too important we can't talk about it? Both of us super wanted to talk about this story explicitly to get more people to read it, and because we want more. Yes, so, no matter how we get Kat and Marisa next, and I think I got to talk to SoVeryFascinated a little bit, and there's if I'm not mistaken, I believe there's I have reason to hope for more, and I'm looking forward to it. So all of this is just grain of salt. This is just because we're being honest. You can't accuse us of just sugarcoating everything, but we still want more. We want it now.
Oh yes, we do. There's so many amazing scenes in this story. I want to go to something that you briefly touched on, which was the cleaning the floor thing. Yes. I traded a number of emails while this story was coming out with SoVeryFascinated and talked a little bit about this, but there's something that I find quite taboo, I suppose, about any time a fictional mind control story invokes some aspect of real mind control. And the way that cults have successfully conditioned people to break away from friends and family, to give up their lives and to dedicate themselves to some sort of typically a belief system of some sort. And sometimes that's just to sometimes they come back years later shaking their heads saying, "Oh, why didn't I see the truth?" And sometimes it's Jonestown. But the idea of this cult, and I can't remember exactly how Calliope refers to it. I'll see if I can pull it up here. I want to say that she calls it work therapy. She at one point in the story, like probably by about day 5, Calliope mentions to Kat that, "Oh, I know this group in upstate New York. They have, they've taken over like an old church. It's a retreat. I think you'd do great there." And you sort of realize, like, she is officially trying to send Kat to the cult. Like, it's happening. And one of the things that she mentions that they do these work therapies, and Kat says, "Work therapies? I've never heard of that." And eventually you kind of find out, and it's this super insidious sort of thing. I mean, and that's the thing that I was talking about with So Very Fascinated in an email, is that it is a riff. It's his riff on a very common thing that happens in cults, which is basically because they're usually out in the middle of nowhere living on a commune or something, everybody is just working, during the hours the sun is up, they're doing some sort of physical labor to build buildings or to, plant crops or, whatever it is that they're doing. But there's a lot of physical labor involved typically. And people, deprogrammers, people who've written about this, authors and researchers and so forth, they talk about the fact that all of that physical exhaustion leads to mental exhaustion, and it robs the person of a mental ability to be skeptical about the claims of the cult leader and all this. But the point is that it is a contributing factor in what allows people to sort of get caught up and trapped in cults. And
I believe the term is "the suffering is the point."
Right. And I asked So Very Fascinated email, I said, "Listen, I know a little bit about cults, but I've not heard this work therapy term. I'm just curious, like, is this something that really happened, or are you just kind of riffing off?" And he briefly explained this. Well, cults use a lot of tiring physical menial labor and things like that. Is part of the process is just breaking people down, and so this is me putting my own spin on it. His words.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that I guess I don't know that I ever would have had that idea myself. Like I don't know that it would have ever entered my imagination to do this in this way. But the point is that you've had this story where there has been this erotic charge to the hypnosis sessions with Kat and Calliope. And then you come down to the point where she's not just getting her hooks into Kat. She's not just kind of getting Kat used to being in trance and being under her thumb and doing as she's told and accepting suggestions. Now she's getting to the point where she's really going to start grinding Kat down and brainwashing her. And so Kat finds herself on her hands and knees scrubbing a bathroom floor with a toothbrush. And somehow it is like one of the most hot, erotic scenes in any story I've ever read. It shouldn't be, but just the savage wrongness of it is incredibly compelling.
It seriously makes Calliope up there. Calliope, I am so sorry, they're So Very Fascinated. It's just me. It makes them exactly Calliope, exactly as twisted as Rusalka or any of the other, like Alice Holloway, any of the fucked up mind controllers on the site, in such a good way. Just that line at the end of that chapter of "I have so many more chores that can make you feel so wonderful" is just it's the perfect gut punch to make you like, I need it to be next week already.
Right.
F5. Where's next week?
Oh yeah. That's always the way. I mean, starting with Cat and Mouse, that was my thing. Like I haven't in a long, long time had one of those stories where I was just going through the whole week, 4 more days until the update, 3 more days till the update, tomorrow the update. It really, really, it just filled my mind. It was always in the back of my mind all through the week that finally this weekend I get to, see what happens next. Amazing, amazing accomplishment. I really, really, I could go on and on. I could point to really specific scenes. Actually, before we go on, I do want to mention the Himalayan Prayer Bowl.
Oh, yes.
What an amazing, now I have never heard one of these. I went and YouTubed it so I could get a feel for what a Himalayan prayer bowl sounds like. it's described perfect. Like if you read the story and then go on YouTube like I did, it'll sound exactly like what you're imagining. It's really, really well done.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those moments like when you're reading Trophy's Legacy and they mention the song Jennifer. You listen to that song while you're reading that story, and it completely changes the mode. When you have that actual sound there, sound is such a hard thing to put into writing. I hate how hard it is, and it is perfect here.
It is. It's really well described, and it's such a clever device. The way that the prayer bowl becomes it becomes sort of the collar that Calliope puts Cat in. It really does become this manifest symbol of her control over Cat and her ability to not just get Cat into trance. She can kind of gong it, striking the side with this hammer, and instantly sends Cat into this sort of orgasmic state. But I thought one of the most insidious and best lines in the story, I want to say it's in day 8, where she's got Cat on the hands and knees, scrubbing the bathroom floor with the toothbrush, and he does this amazing thing where Calliope she picks up on the lie. She is beginning to pierce Cat's sort of undercover identity and get to the real person. And Cat mentions something about Marissa hypnotizing Stacy Kellner. And Calliope asks Cat, are both you and your girlfriend Marissa hypnotists? And Cat chooses not to answer. She says, I shouldn't say, that's private. Calliope strikes the prayer bowl. Cat's whole body tenses up, and this amazing rush of pleasure goes through her. Calliope won't let her touch herself to enhance the pleasure. Cat just has to accept it and take it. And then she asks the question again. So you and Marissa are both hypnotists? And Cat answers right off, I am. She's still learning. And she spills the beans. And so seeing that Calliope is using this pleasure to whittle away at Cat's resolve and get her to answer questions she doesn't want to, leads up to this moment just a few paragraphs later, right at the end of that scene, where Cat mentions that she and Marissa were trying to get Stacy Kellner to leave the cult. And Calliope says, when you talk to her, Stacy, is it possible that you were wrong about the cult? And Cat says, they're a cult. Cults are bad. Calliope taps the prayer bowl again, and the line says, a few minutes later, when Calliope asked the same question again, Cat found much more nuance in her answer.
Oh,
that
so good.
Is just so devious and delicious.
I'm gonna tightness in my chest just reading that line now.
It's so good. It's so good. So anyway, if you've heard us talk about this, hopefully you're celebrating as you've read the story and know all these things that we're talking about and how good they are. If you haven't, we've spoiled some stuff, but it's still a good read.
Yeah, the spoiling the small details means nothing when it's how it's constructed anyway. Like, true. I feel like if you've liked any of this, you will find something else you liked, and the process of it. I mean, I completely left out Stacy's recurring role in the plot, and that's good too.
Those scenes are really great, especially, and there's which I won't spoil, just so we leave a little something on the table. But there's a tremendously good twist between Stacy, those scenes with Stacy and Marissa. There's such a good twist, and that was one of those moments where I read it, and it was like that tightness in my chest, like, oh my god, that means this, that, the other.
You owe it to yourself to read this.
It's
sincerely
really great. So I'm really glad to hear that you talked with SoVeryFascinated and that you have confidence that more is coming, because I really want more.
Oh, same. And I hope I say this every time, but every time you like a story on that site, send an email, because that is what keeps us people breathing, besides the money. Send money too. But the ability to know that your work is affecting people, and I try and make a point of that. Hopefully I did this time before the end, because God, the end was so good. Like even if I have problems with it, the way it's still resolved, the way I was left feeling, still such a good fucking story.
Yes, and that's the thing, is that the resolution of the drama, the resolution of the story and the drama for the characters is fantastic. And it ends exactly where where it should. It ends exactly where it should. But it's just that feeling in my imagination of it. You could have done this, and then you could have done that, and then this character could have come in and said this, and then everything would have gotten turned upside down, and then you could take it back here. It's just all those places that you imagine that it can go, and just kind of wanting, like I said, just wanting more. I just desperately wish that we would have got another 7,500 words out of So Very Fascinated on this, because it was so good.
I'm looking forward to the next 7,500.
Me too. Speaking of the next 7,500 words, it'll probably be the words we are about to speak, because we are going to talk a little bit about Uzobono. I think what we're going to do is we're going to just briefly highlight some of the things that she's worked on between our last show, Black Room 21, where we interviewed Uzobono, and we highly recommend you go listen to that because it's a great interview.
Yes.
And now, and it's been a year and a half, I guess, something like that.
We're so sorry.
You're so sorry. But that also means that there's a lot of Uzobono stuff to dive into. So why don't we just go chronologically? I think when we interviewed Uzobono, it seemed like we were anticipating the release of Core 14 relatively soon, within the next several months. I think that we were thinking that Core 14 was gonna come out, and it did. And that was Precipice Part 1, and then Core 15 is Precipice Part 2. So I think we'll kind of dive into those a little bit more when we get to Core 15, since they are, in essence, two halves of the same story. But that was followed by a short comic, which is a biographies comic, which I really dig that Uzobono does this every now and then. She'll put out a book that, in essence, just kind of reminds you of who the characters are and what the story is so far.
Yeah.
To keep you into things moving forward without sort of spending story time in the books, looking back or catching you up and that sort of thing. I think it's a really effective device.
It's a good way to go, because even if you're reading with everything, I mean, there's the old adage of no matter how much you write, it'll take you way longer than the person takes to read it.
Right.
And they're going to be hungry, but they have to seek out other stuff. So they're going to forget half the stuff they read until they read, they'll remember it when they read through your thing again. But if you even just have the small things, just, hey, remember this character? Then they'll remember and they'll get those gears going again. So it's a great idea to go.
Yeah, so true. So she did that, and then she did her own book, which is The Division, Aria of the Hive, number 10. And that's, if you're following the Division series, that is going some really interesting places. There's some fantastic scenes and some really hot mind control going on. And that's the book that Uzobono is writing herself, doing the artwork for as well. So that's another one to check out. Then we get to Core 15, Precipice Part 2. And I'll just go ahead and say that there was also a recent release called The Hive, which is sort of I think it's described as a techno Bible on all the Hive characters, but it's just basically your guide to the Hive and who they are and what they do and that sort of thing. And then we just got one within the last month, didn't we, MK? Another short.
Yeah, let me double check when that came out, because I just read it today because I'm the worst. But looks like that came out, back on April 9th.
Right. And so that one is called Consumer Affairs, and that one's significant because that's Uzobono's first short comic released using Daz Studios opposed to Poser, which was interesting because that was one of the things she mentioned in our interview, that she'd been working with Daz and was wanting to eventually transition to it.
And honestly, obviously I'm not a 3D artist, so I can't say the ins and outs in the super death way, but considering changing formats, me just changing from Word to LibreOffice or the like,
right.
I mean, it felt like it was that much of a difference. Like I imagine it was difficult on her side, but I couldn't tell. It all came through perfectly.
It did, and Daz has a different look. I guess the renderer in Daz, it has a different kind of look, and one of the things that it does really, really well is it does like that sort of plasticky sheen on skin that she likes to do with like her rubber dolls. That look really, really comes off nicely in Daz. And I'm sure that there's other aspects of it that have gotten her interested, but that was one of the things that really jumped out, is just the way that the rubber dolls can kind of look in Daz. I can't help but think that that's what she's been aiming for a long time, and now she's in a position where she can really kind of render what was in her imagination.
Yeah, I can believe it. I'm the worst because I was just noticing that she was still getting the great facial expressions out of everyone.
I know.
Because like the thing that stands out to me from all of the core I've read is just these people make the most. They don't make the faces you're going to see like when you like this emotion means this emotion means this. They make the emotion that's actually perfectly suited the exact moment that they're in, which you don't see for a lot of artists. Because I mean, and I'm not saying this is because people are lazy, but it's a lot harder to make a face of person is disgusted but turned on and also kind of not sure how they should be feeling about this. Mm-hmm. But Uzobono hits that every single time.
It really is. It's one of the most. I think it's one of the things that I think about the most in thinking about what makes her the artist that she is. And I think that you and I talked about this specific point in one of our previous discussions of the core series, but her abilities as a visual storyteller, I think I'm making the same point I might have made then. There's certain things that you can do in a TV show or a movie where an actor can give a look that communicates words that aren't spoken, but you understand what it is they're communicating because of that look. That's almost impossible to do in comics, and Uzobono can do it. Her ability to tell you, the reader, what a character is thinking or feeling with the facial expression of a 3D model, I have to say she's in a class of her own in that regard. She is supremely talented at bringing those characters to life in a way that I just have not seen from very many other 3D artists.
Yeah, it's just like I don't want to say that no one else can do it, but definitely like from my personal experience, just top tier.
Yeah. Well, if anything, that statement of mine speaks to the fact that I haven't looked at enough 3D art, so I should go out and try to find those other people that are doing it. But certainly Uzobono is doing it really, really well.
Oh, definitely.
So why don't we talk a little bit about Core 15, because we are going to take the world famous Core Questionnaire about Core 15. And so why don't we just briefly touch on Core 15 before we do that? Precipice is an interesting story because number one, several of the things that you and I talked about, I think back in Core 13, like one of the things is like, well, what would you like to see? Is there, characters, blah, blah, blah. And some of that stuff has happened in Precipice. Yeah. One of the things that I know that we both talked about was seeing Dr. Exus return, and she's back. And that was phenomenal.
I was not expecting that. I'll be perfectly honest. Like I was thinking something had to happen with the way 14 ends, but it's kind of a fake out.
Right.
Like the way you're thinking, oh no, Exus is back and taking over everything, but Exus is actually trapped in a or in a warehouse over there.
Yeah, she's like living in a basement somewhere, hiding from authorities and so forth. I think that the conceit of Precipice is that Tammy has this problem. She's having this dialogue, this inner monologue about this feeling that she's got, that this statement that Mechthillion makes back in, I don't know, Core 8 or 9 or something like that, that mind control is in the world, mind control technology is the rising tide. And eventually it's going to rise and just consume everything. And she feels that there's either got to be a way to float on top of it or to be in charge of it, to basically, take a side. And this story is sort of about Tammy answering that question for herself, I think.
And it's how far she's willing to go in that. I mean, it seems like she's willing to go much further than she actually is a few times, with her seemingly ready to just throw Nihon to the wolves.
Right.
But I am very relieved that wasn't actually her plan, though, because I like how. I mean, and to be fair, like I do appreciate the continued show of just how robotic Nihon is now, and how the thought of just, oh no, yeah, for this plan, I'll totally fuck that chick that, might be completely horrible. It's whatever. I like sex. She's attractive. I can do this. Like they don't show that part of the conversation, but I can see her rationalizing it and explaining it in a very computer sort of way, where it's just, yeah, of course I do that. Why? Like, just ask me first. I don't know. Right. Even don't ask me. This is important.
Yeah. One of the other aspects that we talked about back in Core 13 is we felt like Nihon was ripe for some sort of major action, some major story thing, perhaps, some sort of reboot of the character. And I can't help but think that where we leave things in Core 15 is that Nihon is, Tammy does this whole gambit. She needs information from Exus, and so she pretends to give Nihon's control override codes to Exus so that she now belongs to Exus. And Exus says at the onset, assuming that I believe that you're doing this, like, I'll play along with you, but I'm very skeptical that that's what's happening. And she's right. Like, she sees through it from the beginning, that it's just Nihon faking this so that they can get the info they need. But the point is that it leaves Nihon with Exus at the end of that story. And Exus built Nihon. She is the reason that Nihon is who she is and not Nicole. And so if there's any character that is going to be able to subvert this version of Nihon, or if there's any character that could potentially say, hey, how'd you like to be Nicole again? Because I could make that happen. What would it be worth to you? What would you be willing to do if you could go back to who you were before and have that relationship you used to have with your friends? That's one of the few things I think that could really, really tempt that character, and that could lead some interesting places.
Honestly, like, I think that would be interesting, because I feel like it'd be fun to see the way that I don't think that character would actually want that. Like, I feel like people would be, Tammy would want her to want that. I think that, well, part of Mel from like 5 issues ago, maybe 10 issues ago at this point.
Melanie's mask would want that.
But I think that I feel like, especially the way that, she clarifies her name, her intended purpose, the way she's she's not trying to cling to any of her old humanity. I mean, hey, I could be wrong, because characters can be very complicated and not telling you what they really feel. But I would be really, like, that conversation would be interesting, I think, for how much it would reveal how cool she is with who she is now.
Right.
And I think that would still be really interesting, because you don't usually see that in an MC story. You usually see, oh, what? I was different before? Put me back. You don't usually see what are you talking about? I'm better now.
Right.
Like, I'm cool. I'm really cool. Do you have any idea what I can do?
Which in a sense, I think is a very, very human thing. One of the things that we're so adaptable, and that people can go through these tremendous changes and things like that, and then they just own it. And they become that. And that's something very, very interesting in Nicole's character, is that she has really, as Nihon, she really has taken ownership over this new person that she finds herself being. And each issue she's coming into her own more and more, like the way that in issue number 15, where Tammy invites Nihon back to her apartment because she wants to do that whole test. She wants to see if Nihon can hack and override this core gadget that Tammy's got, where she's going to be able to hack into other people's core implants and take control of them. And she and Tammy end up having sex with another core officer. And at the end of it, Nicole says, I'd really like to do this with you and Dr. York. And if you all are open to the idea, we should have sex together. And just, it's saying it in very sort of, robotic android sorts of, just coming out and saying it rather than being all coy and flirty about it. It's really, really charming. And yet it is Nihon having her own agency in that, and becoming her own sort of person in that situation.
You know what that's the way she talks there actually reminds me of? And it's going to be like a almost insulting reference, but I swear it's not. Is just the energy that the woman has in the, I'm your lifeguard, you need a lifeguard, you're in a pool.
Right.
Where the guy says, this isn't a pool, it's a bathtub.
Right.
And I think you should leave. And she just responds with, no, I think I should stay. And I think we should have sex. And I think that's the energy in a more like calm way
yes.
that Diwad had.
Yes, that is quite accurate.
I think I should stay with you in York, and I think we should have sex.
Yes, we should. And speaking on behalf of the readers, yes, as well.
Yes. Those characters are all great, please.
Yes, they are. So just a couple of things that I want to highlight. We don't have to go through the whole story, but just a couple of things I want to highlight. There's a very tantalizing scene where York is seemingly compromised by one of the Hive maker drones. That's pretty spicy.
Especially, like, I'd forgotten, but because you reminded us of 14, I went back and I looked at the end. The way that also, the stuff at the very end of 14 and that happening, it almost makes me wonder, like you say, appears to be, I was thinking she was completely screwed, but what did Exus leave behind? Like, is that really what happened there?
Well, and that's my whole thing, is that I could, I don't know anything. Like I said, I don't ask when Tabico and I are emailing. I don't ask her for story details. So anything I say on here is coming purely from my own speculation. But I am thinking that there have been things happening behind the scenes, hands moving stuff into position that we don't know about. But there's just enough sort of vagueness in some of these things that leads me to believe that later on they're going to be able to come back and say, but what you didn't see is this happened before that, and therefore, conclusion, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because like Tabico's really known for really dark body horror, weird aliens, etc., but also romance. Like, I don't feel enough people bring up the fact that Tabico writes some of the most romantic stories, like just period.
True.
Like Winterflesh is super adorable.
Yes,
some of the interactions in, like, even though like the whole what's the term she's for, the Southern California University stuff can be so twisted. Like, sweet oil is one of the sweet. If anyone asks for like a sweet MC story, I link them that direction, because it's just hey, here's some co-eds playing around with mind control oil. It's sweet. And I feel that as much as like, I know the Tabico can go super dark. Like the Weapon Ready series is like, there's no light there. Don't worry about it. Look away. Yep. It's not happening. Even with how dark 15 ends, I feel like there's a reason for me to believe that's not going to be how it ends.
Yeah. I think she's setting us up the bomb. That's what I think.
We definitely have a signal going on here.
Right. I think that, all right, I'll just throw some things out.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just throw a couple things out. I think that Tammy, one of the reasons that Tammy is so interested in Exus is because Exus is a character who was droned and has come back from it via this sort of, backup clone that she had that had her memories up to a certain point. And the fact is that she and Tammy are the only characters who have survived droning in that sense. And they did it different ways, but that fact remains. So there's definitely a lesson to be learned from that. There's also the thing that, Exus withstood, with the use of some technology, Exus withstood a mind control takeover event from one of those, like the Mark III drones or whatever, one of the controller drones with the antenna.
Yeah.
Exus withstood that. So the point I guess I'm making is that there is precedent for all of the dark, messed up things that happen in Core 15. There is precedent for characters surviving those events already built into the series, and it's possible that those things may come into play. That is where my mind is on those things.
Oh, I'm right there with you. So my brain went a few places in that point, and the first of it was the little bit in the Hive, which I keep wanting to say the 3 Hive 3 because I'm so sorry, Uzobono, but where it mentions that the Hive itself, we think of it as physical because we're physical, but it exists in a different plane and is trying to use us to sort of cross the plane, sort of a thing.
Okay.
And the fact that, and that might be complete bullshit, but which,
But it's fascinating. Fascinating idea, though.
It is. But then you have the fact that, and I feel like it was earlier, but I didn't notice it as much. 15 really ramps up the idea of to the nodes in the hive. People aren't going around saying, oh God, or oh goodness, or etc. They're saying, oh hive. And it's so twistedly good.
I am so glad you brought that up because I was going to bring that up. That is one of my favorite things ever. So instead of speaking the word of a supreme being like, oh Buddha, or oh Vishnu, or whatever, oh God, oh goddess, they say, oh hive, because hive has become their supreme being. That is one of those details. I mean, honestly, like we're doing a podcast right now because I wanted to talk about that point. I think that is so brilliant. It's such just a messed up, really twisted, fucked up thing, and yet so perfectly done here. I really love that. So glad you brought that up.
It's the things about like Tabico's world building has done this in the past. In fact, I noticed a subtle thing where I feel like their story adaptation and allegiance can be put into the same world because the fact that people go, oh, prophets.
Yeah.
But just the fact that Tabico will think about like, okay, so these people are like this, they're in this world, they're set up like this, and Tabico won't just go, oh, okay, so I'll just write them like they're in mid 2000s, the U.S.
Right.
in Americana with all this going. The world affects the characters in unique ways based on how the world is screwed up. I've never seen a story where someone's gone, oh, hive before, and it wouldn't fit, but it fits here.
It does. And just in case that this is not clear what we're saying here, so like instead of a character saying, oh God, yes, that feels so good, they would say, oh hive, yes, that feels so good.
And it's not just one character. It's very much, it's one of those things where even when their eyes aren't going hive blue or hive green, it's one of those colors where I think they say it's blue. Yeah, it's turquoise or teal.
Yeah, it's kind of a turquoise color.
Which I don't mean insultingly. I just mean I can never tell you if something's green or blue or not. It's just, you can tell that even if they're looking completely human, a very important part of them is not what we would consider human anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it is one of those flourishes that Tabico is just really good at, and we benefit enormously from her writing in these stories. And I guess the last thing that I just want to say about this story is, oh my God, Melanie in this story.
She's been my favorite part of Core, not gonna lie. Her slow subversion, not always so slow, and just the conceit is gone.
Yes. Melanie is just that. Like that's the thing. Like you would think at this point, like okay, it's kind of done. She's pretty much brainwashed. She's brainwashed other people. Like she's past the point of no return. There's not a lot of sort of shock value mind control that you can get out of this character. But what you didn't take into consideration is Tabico.
Yeah. And even though she's done all those things with us, her friends somehow were still deluding themselves that she was their friend.
Yeah. That end scene where she fucks Tammy's plan all to hell and gets Tammy captured, enslaved, melted, and then rebuilt as the Predatority drone. This new drone model. And the fact that Melanie spends most of those scenes masturbating feverishly at what she is doing, it's crazy hot. It's crazy hot.
This character that you've seen be like, she went from literally being the voice of reason who was holding back the floodgates of the Cairo City PD from just being nothing but drones, and now she's like, oh, by the way, this is like the best thing. This is like I am serving perfectly. Yeah. I am just ruining this floor right now.
Oh my God.
It's so dramatic.
It's amazing. And it's one of those things, again, we talked about this aspect before, the slow burn that you can get out of long form storytelling, the payoff is moments like this. So I just want to say thank you to Tabico and Uzobono once again.
So many thank yous.
And more. Thank you, comma, more.
I guess we should do their the
questionnaire.
I guess we should Yeah, we should do their questionnaire.
Let's do the core number 15 questionnaire live on the air for, I think, the second time. So,
sounds good to me.
Why don't you go first?
Asking or telling?
Telling, because I've done enough
All
talking.
right.
Question number 1, what were your favorite 3 scenes and why? I know at least one of your favorite scenes.
So I wrote 5, and I'm going to be trying to whittle them down during this, and I apologize in advance. So, like, the first one I've got on there is because I reread this today, because even though, like, I mean, it's been in my head since I read it, I wanted to make sure that I didn't just go, that one scene where the one thing was hot. And rereading it was a trip.
Yeah.
But the scene where Mel gets her tattoo is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Just the sheer disrespect for her, her humanity is a question mark at this point.
Exactly. I mean, you know, like the girlfriend's just like, look, I own her. You can put a tattoo on her. She's mine.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, she fucked you once. She doesn't. That's the only time she's ever met you, as far as she's concerned. Put your name by her cunt. It'll be great.
That is so wrong, and therefore hot.
And so I have 3 on here that are just Mel. So I'll just get those out of the way and then throw the other 2 on there. Mel just kind of striding in like, hey, fucker, what's going on?
Right.
To the horrible mind control conversion is she's got this shit-eating grin that I just, like, the scene is hot. Don't get me wrong. I'm here for it. But just the fact that she's just like, you can imagine her just going in like, hey, chuckle fucks.
Yeah.
But it's just...
She's coming through that door like Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Oh, it's fucking amazing. I mean, she doesn't have, a 5-minute long fight with Keith David, but I could see it.
No, but she did come to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and she is all out of bubblegum.
I think it's more eat ass and chew bubblegum in this case.
Eat ass and chew bubblegum. You're right, okay. What's the third one? But no,
it is Mel's reveal of, oh, by the way, I've been a hive drone for like months. How did you not realize this? Right. How did you not realize this?
Yes.
And those are great. And so I'm like, I feel like I can, even though it's amazing, I should probably actually drop out the tattoo, even though it's amazing.
No.
Just because,
keep it.
And it's okay. Then I'm going to end up with 5 here, but I'm going to try and pretend I can weed out 2. The learning protocol scene, where we reveal that even though supposedly we've been making core more ethical, we haven't.
Right.
But they've just been doing this behind the scenes and no one's been paying attention.
Not so much.
You forget that the Cairo City Police is this horrible, corrupt organization, even though you watch all these things going on with like Lilith and so forth.
Yeah.
But no, the rank and file core members are all still brainwashing each other. Whatever, we can't escape that. It's just so casually fucked up. And York being just completely fucked over by the drone. Even though, like, I feel like she of all fucking people should know better. At the same time, her character is so hot. The way it happens is so hot, and it's just so. Oh, you're ready for compliance? Okay, I'll just look at this pad. Oh, I'm fucked. It's just, even though it's so small a scene, like, I feel like I could probably, if I was actually sticking to 3 instead of lying and doing 5, that would theoretically I could do, but also no.
Yes, that one's got to be in there. That I mean, you've got all 3 in mine. Although, well, you've got 2 out of my 3, or you've got 2 out of my 5, or whatever. The only other scene that I want to add to this, because I agree with all of those, but the one that I want to throw in is I love the scene after Niwan and Dr. Exus make sweet love.
Oh,
and she starts monologuing and basically saying, so what do I do with you? What do I do now? How can I turn this into an advantage? And Niwan goes to answer and she's like, shut up. Like, I'm monologuing. This is how I think. Like that. I love that. I'm so glad Exus is back. I love that character.
I love how self-aware she is with that. And what do you want from me? I'm a, what'd you say, cooperative megalomaniac. It happens eventually. I'm just never ready. I'm never actually prepared. And just the way she's sad about not being a good enough villain is so relatable and also horrible.
Oh, yeah, she's great. I love Dr. Exus. I'm thrilled that she's back. Okay.
Don't say it.
Go ahead. Why don't you read the next question?
Then, did you find, I feel like it's almost unfair.
Yes.
Did you find Niwan to be an interesting character?
Yes, more. I think
you get 2 in a row because we basically just described that for like 3 hours.
I think not really. I think we talked about that, but the answer is yes. We find Niwan an exceptionally interesting character. We're exceptionally invested in her. We're very interested in what's going on. Please keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, more.
Yes, more.
So 3, some core storylines have been largely self-contained. Would you be interested in seeing, in revisiting the Bunny Girls or the Blicky Worms, the Hate Laces, or none of the above?
What are the Hate Laces?
That one I was trying to remember. I was like feeling really bad because like I feel like I should know, but I can't. There's no wiki, so I can't easily check. And there's 15 volumes of this, and they've gotten really long. And like I'm not complaining because I always want more, but I don't remember that one. I feel like that may have been a detail that was sort of glossed over really early on. I remember the worms really well.
Oh yeah, well I remember the Bunny Girls, the worms, but boy, the Hate Lace is that like the people in the club, like when they go to the nightclub and there's like those mind controllers? Is that the Hate Laces?
I think it must be. I feel really bad.
I do too. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I pride myself on just knowing this comic inside and out, and I'm totally blanking on that. All right. Well, I'll have to go look up what the Hate Laces are to find out whether I want more of that. But the Bunny Girls and the Icky Worms, I can say yes to. Especially, I would say the Bunny Girls. I love the Bunny Girl. I love how cutesy they are and how sort of round and completely non-threatening, and yet how they are so totally insidious and devious. I love the Bunny Girls. I'm all about that. Also, the Licky Worms, that was a super, super hot issue. Tons of squick in that. And so, yes, I'm all about seeing... I'm going to go ahead and say yes to the Hate Laces, too, because I love everything about Core, so there's no way that I can want less of that as well. So, yes is the answer. Comma, more.
My thought with the Hate Laces is if I don't remember it, that just means you have to make me remember it. So write more of it because I'm sure whatever it is, I'll enjoy it.
More. Okay.
And the worms are like where I agree with you exactly on the Bunny Girls and the worms, just with my leaning more towards the worms, but I also still agree with you on both. So I'm right with you on that.
Okay. Next question. What was your opinion of page 94?
So my thought is like, I'm almost wondering about what, because I feel like this is one of those loaded questions where it's like it's your new friend or your best friend walks in and says, "What do you notice?"
Right,
and you're like, "Oh shit, did you get a haircut?"
Right, and you're like, "Oh, those shoes look great."
Because like, and I mean that in the super not holding way because it looks like completely adequate. Like it has good, interesting composition. You've got the one shot that's them up against the counter. Then you got a smaller version of that with some good expression shifting, and then the sort of Dutch angle. Mm-hmm. And I like that. And I'm sure the panel layout is like it's been done like throughout this comic even, but like it's a really good transition from one scene to the other. If that's what you're looking for, I like it. Like I have nothing negative to say about it. It looks good. So I'm almost like, I'm not sure what you want from me, but I want to give it to you because I like it.
So the thing that I would say about this is that I guess, assuming that there's not some mix-up and that we're looking at the wrong page 94, but the thing that I pick up on in this scene is that we're coming back to, and I don't remember the character's name, but she's the one that was infested by the Bunny Girl. She's carrying Bunny Girl eggs.
All right.
From back in Core 13. And that was the thing that I kind of picked up on is that she's still in play. She's still pregnant with the Bunny Girl eggs. And so my opinion is we should probably come back to that storyline at some point.
I'm for it.
All right. Assuming that we haven't looked at the wrong page 94, that's the opinion.
Yeah. If it's another one, then we're very sorry. And we will answer the same question for another page. Just, all right. Please.
Since that was a short one, I'm going to give you the next one too. Okay.
By all means.
After Core concludes, which character or characters, other than the 3 core protagonists, would you be interested in seeing a spin-off created for?
I almost wanted to make a joke about Niwan just to do it. Mm-hmm. But no. My very first thought here is Exus.
Me too.
Because she's clearly got this crazy huge story. We see the black and white flashback. There are probably like 5 core length comics you could tell about her that we don't even know.
Yeah.
Like just I wouldn't even know to ask for.
Yeah.
Similarly, I feel like I always get her wrong, but the chick in charge of the KCPD, the awesome chief is just amazing. Yeah, she is terrible and horrible, and I would like love to see more of her. York is great.
Yes, I agree.
And has just been consistently amazing. And I feel like it'd be hard with where the story is right now to get more of her without more of Tammy. But I mean, I don't know. There's some way maybe. And the blue triplets, Lilith and I'm spacing on names because I'm horrible. But it's not that they're underdeveloped. It's just that they have this weird existence wherein they're clones, they're blue, and they had this purpose they were created for, and just they're basically a part of Exes too. So you get Exes, you get more of them. So I just get to cheat and say Exes twice.
I agree with you. I totally agree on Exes, York, McFillian. All three of those would have been my picks as well. I'd be very, very interested in seeing more from them. Okay, moving on.
So, number 6, what did you think of Dr. X's return and the role she played in this issue?
Say it with me now. Yes, comma, more.
More.
Yeah, I think we talked about this pretty well. Yeah, we love Exus being back. We love the fact that Exus is now in a position, you know, it reminds me of that speech that Daniel Day-Lewis has in Gangs of New York as Bill the Butcher, where he's talking about how thankful he is to Liam Neeson's character for beating him within an inch of his life, taking his eye, because it made him hungry. And he rose back up and you know, ultimately, you know, became the legend that he is in the film. I very much feel like Exus is in this place where she's been beaten down and she's in a position to be hungry to get back the power, the prestige, the so forth that she had. I'm very, very excited about where she could go.
Super concur. And especially, I noticed the energy that Exus has is very similar to the Hive progenitor that we meet in the Hive. And I almost feel like those two probably knew each other, and I'm curious about that just because it's me. Like, maybe not. The world's not that small. Tabico's not the kind of writer that makes everyone have to know everybody. But just, yes, more. I'm very curious about Exus.
Fascinating prospect. Okay, question 7 is yours. What was your opinion on the cliffhanger?
So when I wrote a little bit for myself in advance, not a script, but just so I'd be able to like not have to remember every little detail. And the first word I wrote was just tears.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, in all seriousness, I mean, it's hot and it's great, but also, like, I'm very emotionally attached to Tammy, and watching her melt and then be rebuilt as the Pridari is just, it's harrowing. And I really want to believe that she'll be okay, even though it's also super hot and fucked up.
Super
like,
hot.
I'm equally, to me, a good MC story is the one that makes you root for the character to not be controlled while you're masturbating about it.
Yeah.
And this definitely fits that for me. So it's this torn of, I really want things to be okay, but if they're not, I'll probably be okay too.
Right.
And it's, my biggest thing is
I'll masturbate my way through it. Like I'll get over it somehow or something.
I will find, if I have to write a story to get through it, I will.
Right.
But it's just, it's so good and dark and twisted, and it feels like we're in that darkest moment that we've been in a few times before. But I just need to know how we get through it. And I'm so emotionally invested, while also super turned on.
Right. I think for me, my mind immediately, and I think it speaks to what you're saying, I'm so invested in Tammy as a character, my mind immediately came up with, okay, here's 3 things that she could have done to circumvent this. Like, number 1, this was her plan the whole time. She's gone into the machine, she's been the ghost in the shell, she's come back, she's got this expanded view now. Like, like in the machine, she's got all this computational power. She's seen something that no one else has seen, and she's going to take that revelation with her into the Hive and conquer from within. She's like, this is a clone. Like, the real Tammy's, back at headquarters in a closet somewhere, and she sent, rather than be the backup clone, she sent the backup clone into the Hive. And now that she has got a clone in the Hive, she's going to be able to communicate with that clone and do something, blah, blah, blah. Like, those are the I immediately started thinking of writerly ways to get out of it.
I would never have allowed you to drone me if I hadn't already succeeded 30 minutes ago.
Exactly. Like that's the thing, is that, and I think that Tabico is giving us indications of that just in the way that in Core 15, Tammy is playing 4-dimensional chess with everybody else. I mean, she, like, for the first time in the series, she is just on a different level in this issue. Like, once she comes out of that computer and she's sort of had her mind expanded, she's got a whole different demeanor, a whole different agenda. She's a whole different character. And it just makes me think that all of that was a setup in order to explain how she does the impossible and defeats Hive.
Yeah. I mean, she became way more manipulative after that point. We have her blatantly lying to Niwan about getting permission to play with this girl's brain.
Yep.
We have her just casually just being basically willing to mind break this girl to be able to see just how far the core implants go.
Yep.
Like, it feels impossible for that to... There's no way a writer like Tabico would set all this up and then have it just be, oh, and then she loses and it's the end.
Right.
Like, that would just be such...
Not so much.
Like, no.
So, all right. There we go. Last question. What do you think is Tammy's favorite flavor of ice cream, and what about Pradari-001?
So Tammy, I'm going with French vanilla because it's the best flavor.
Yes.
And with Pradari, I'm saying that it's whatever best serves Hive, which is probably going to be dull milk flavored ice cream.
Oh, that was clever. I was going to say cookies and cream, but that was way better. Way better.
Oh, I mean, I just made the last part up on the spot, so I'm lucky with that one. But man,
good.
I want cookies and cream now.
I know, right? I've got those Oreo cookies and cream Klondike bars in the freezer. Those things are excellent.
Oh, so jealous. But what's your bet on this?
I really honestly would have said, I was trying to think of a color. I was trying to think of an ice cream like so Pradari would be like black cherry because, it's black and red.
Yes.
And then regular Tammy would be Neapolitan.
I could see that.
Because it's sort of a triumvirate, and Tammy's got Niwan and Melanie, or she's got York and Niwan, or whatever. Threesomes. It's the threesomes of ice cream, and I want Tammy, York, and Niwan in a threesome. That's what I'm trying to say here, folks.
I mean, me too. That's the whole. Let's see, what is this? What role do you think Dr. X's return? Make that happen even more.
Yes.
All these questions could be answered with threesome.
Yes. All right. So that is the Core 15 questionnaire. Once again, thanks to Uzobono, thanks to Tabico for sharing what continues to be my favorite thing in the erotic mind control scene ever. It's amazing. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, seriously. Like, you're knocking it out of the park constantly. Like, at first when Core started, a part of me was like, oh, we're getting less Tabico in like just purely literary format. But it is like, I wouldn't say it's worth it. I would say it is more than I possibly would have hoped for it to be, and it's great, and I would not want to get rid of it for the world. So thank you for writing and sharing this amazing story with us.
Agree. Speaking of the phrases constantly and knocking it out of the park, Madam Kistulot, let's talk about you.
Well, first thing, it's like, I can take credit for helping with it, even if it's not exactly about me, but I did want to highlight one story by another. I almost feel bad saying up and coming now, since they're getting like more and more stories out there and they're making a name for themselves on their own. Yeah. But I want to highlight Modren's Whiteout, because we've been mentioning, like all that anxiety in Cat Came Back, and Whiteout is a story that had me all but in panic attacks at times because of how much these characters meant to me as I was going through. How much we have Whiteout, we have a superheroine story that's different in like, I mean, every story is different, but like it's not just one you'll see as often. You have a character who's an established member of a team who learns that she likes mind control, maybe, or at least hypnosis, maybe, and tries to seek it out and gets way more than she imagined going. And the way that warps her life, and the way that her new partner has made some horrible mistakes she really has to fix. It's hot. It's fun. It has that good, fun character writing that just makes you not want to stop reading and need more and more and more of it, which is why it's good we're getting the continuing stories with Grayscale. Right. But just like you mentioned you'd read some of it before, and do you remember like how far you got in that?
Yeah, I got to the part, which I don't know. I mean, we're going to kind of, I guess, spoil, but I mean, it's sort of like the basic conceit of the story. But can I spoil the fact that the superhero and the supervillain secret identities meet, like that?
I don't think thing? That. No, I think you kind of need to get anything useful out.
All right, so the conceit of this story is that the hero has a mind control encounter with the villain, and then the hero is sort of seeking an outlet for that in their vanilla secret identity life, where they encounter the villain in their secret identity life. And that is a delicious setup. I mean, I think of different times that people have done this in comics and films and so forth. And there's always this amazing heightened kind of tension and, oh, they know, and all that sort of thing. It's played to such wonderful dramatic effect here. I've read probably the first 6 updates to this on the archive before I got busy with other things. So I definitely get the characters and the setup. I haven't been through as much of the story as you. I'm not as invested on that level, but I thought it was fantastic. And is this, I'm assuming, given the fact that it's now available as a paperback, if you want it, you can get it digital, you can get it EPUB and so forth. I'm assuming that it is done now.
Yep, it is done. And
so how was it? Should I assume that I should read it? Is that the case?
No, you should. It's amazing. It's great. It's I recommend. Now you get to benefit from the fact that the cliffhangers don't kill you, because it really nice. Seriously, the fact that it came out the same, like during some of the same time as, or like close enough before that, like it felt like it was so that into the cat came back, like all this anxiety, like the world is clearly full of it because people are just pumping it out.
Right.
But now you can just go from, oh my God, what's going to happen, to, oh, that's what happens. And I honestly, I almost feel like that might make it seem a little bit less dramatic, just from a purely, you won't be suffering for a week waiting for more and constantly saying, hey, Modren, I'll edit the next piece of this if you let me see it.
Right.
But it's sincerely really great. Val is amazing. Blanc is amazing. I mean, frankly, oh God, Modren's going to kill me because I can't remember her name now, but it has one of the Patty. Gosh, I'm so sorry. Patty is just one of my favorite characters in MC fiction now. Yeah. She's just so, I don't say because I'm, for one, I'm not very much of a drinker, but I would want to go out for a drink specifically with this character. But I feel like even if Patty might give me such a fucking hard time, it would be amazing and fun and great. And just that, and Blanc is amazing. Just, there's not a character in this story that's not either you love to hate or you want to be friends with. Yeah. And it's that combined with the heat and with just, it's so good and it's so sweet, and it does one of those things really well where you have this super dark fucked up MC story stuff going on, but you also have, but these are people, and it plays with that in such a good way that just everyone should read it. And we're both sort of playing around constantly with the idea of doing something together, some kind of crossover, because I mean, I don't know if anybody knows, but I write comic book superhero stuff sometimes, and it would be
I hear
great
you have
if
something
we could
to do with that
finally
Silver Girl character. Is that you? Is that
maybe I can't remember.
Right. That's just the mind control talking, though.
That's, I mean, naturally I forget whenever I'm not in the chair. So
yeah.
What can you do?
So you all are threatening. It sounds like the idea has been floated, but maybe we're just waiting on the timing or something like that, and we're going to see Val cross over with Silver Girl at some point.
It would seriously be a dream. I have always wanted, I've constantly been that person who's like, oh, these people do cross it. Thrall got to do crossovers with Trilby, with Tabico, and I've gotten to do a little bit before, but I was never in a good place where I actually got to be able to keep it up. I always feel like I kind of dropped the ball in my previous crossovers with people. So I'm really hoping I get to pull this off in the future.
I wish you the best. I hope that you're able to as well, because I mean, like I said, I know your work. I've read a bit of this. I know I've got some idea of how good this is, and I think that it would be a really, really fantastic fit, given that you all obviously have so much crossover in your particular tastes and interests as far as the superhero genre mind control.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about your stuff specifically. Is your latest story, and one of the things that's going to become a recurring theme in this segment is, what the hell have you been drinking lately where you have suddenly become the master of awesome titles? Because you are the master of awesome titles, I'm telling you.
Thank you.
Is your latest one from May 8th? Or I guess as we're recording this,
Yeah.
So why buy the cow when you can make your own?
So I'm very, very blessed with some amazing people that are throwing ideas my way and paying me, which I also appreciate. And just when you get handed the idea of superheroine turned to cow, you need to make something fun with it. And ever since you were one of the people that helped me get my first EPUB story out there. The girlfriend's mom's a hypnotist, and not allowed to wear panties in her home.
Right.
Her house. And just, I found that, don't get me wrong, I love children's one-word titles, but can you remember which one was Descent?
No,
or which one was Taken?
I can remember. I can remember Bound. I can remember Bridesmaid and Tether and Recovery. Maybe
obviously like trinkets and like there's. Yeah, but it's like I found that the more evocative you make a title, the more people are going to click on it. Yeah. And I've just really started to run with it. That one has gotten a very dramatic response for just the fact the visceral. Transformation's one of those things you see parallel with mind control and like as a part of it a lot, and I feel that an unwilling transformation that's cruel and twisted and just hot is incredibly fun for me, and getting to play around with that, and I mean when is lactation not fun, is just makes that one incredibly great. And it's been the latest I've been doing, luckily people have realized I like superheroes, so I've been getting a lot of stuff that's not even just the main stuff, like a bit back was Inner Daemon, which is a totally shameless name because I just really love the way that Inner Demon is a thing, and then computers, daemons, and artificial intelligence. Because frankly,
a wonderful image and wordplay all wrapped into one.
Because like my thought is just you take like, and this isn't the story exactly, but just like it's a sort of thought that plays through my head a lot. You get a character who has like a sort of a suit set up, like your Iron Man sort of character, and you've got an AI sort of situation inherently into that, or some kind of advanced computerization. And it is so tempting to just give more and more little bits of like, well, I don't want to remember when I have to do that. Computer, do that. Or I don't want to, I'm not the best at figuring out flight plans. Computer, do that. And then like, at what point does that stop being you? Because you're the one programming your computer, but are you?
Right. It's a wonderful, I mean, that's sort of a Heinlein kind of high concept sci-fi type of thing. That's a great premise.
Thank you. And then I know that you mentioned this title cracking you up, and I'm going to get to explain it. How to surrender your identity as a superheroine to achieve fulfillment and financial stability. And that one owes credit entirely to Skatelet. Skatelet, who by no means a new writer, but definitely
I love Skatelet. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I feel like I've gotten like just so much more notice lately in a really good way. More lately, of course, also when I talk, I'm like talking as that person who thinks of like, 2005 on MC Stories was yesterday. So like pay me no mind when I say stuff is especially new. Right. But just so I was talking to Skatelet, and Skatelet hadn't been doing great because, life is not great for everybody right now. And I was just like, I'm going to try and write something. And I looked through some of their work, read some of their stuff, and I mean, they're great. Like the way they really capture the Dom capitalist idea, just rich, mean businesswoman to a T. And I just thought, what is the best way to show that I respect someone and that I understand their shtick and what they're doing? And How to Pay Your College Loans is a great title. That's very solid, but they always abbreviate it as HTPYCL, which is great because you know what they're talking about when you see the shape gets ingrained in your mind. And I just thought, how can I take that title and make it too far?
Right.
Like I feel that I promise it wasn't mockery, but it's just, how do I show you that I love that title by doing it to write a story for you? That's also the abbreviation will basically be the name of another story.
I think it's safe to go ahead and say win. Go ahead and mark yourself down a check mark in the win column for this one, okay?
Put that over there
because keep that in the bank. It's fantastic. Let me ask you something, because this is something that you do a lot more of than I do. Commission stuff.
Yeah.
I find commissions very challenging. I've done them, but when somebody says, like, I have this fantasy or I have this idea for a story, and like there's a character and they're mind controlled by this method, or there's a character and I think they have a job doing thus and such, and so therefore mind control. I find it a really, really unique challenge trying to get sort of tune my imagination into creating something that sort of exists outside of my own sort of taste library or whatever.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that just a little bit?
Oh no, totally. I'd be happy to. For me, part of the process is that this used to be a big hang up on me, made me very anxious, and why I didn't want to do it for a long time, is the thought that, wait, someone's commissioning me? Someone wants to pay me to get more of my words? I thought that's, oh, wait, right, okay, I can do this.
Right.
So once I got over that, it's sort of wait, someone's paying me. Someone wants to see my take on this idea. So I sort of I used to play this game with a friend of mine back when I was like a teenager that was, I mean, this is going to sound really bad for this game, but I mean like 18. That was name anything and I will make it sexy. Okay. Literally anything. It was you could throw like barbed wire, garbage, a literal dump heap, and like it would be tricky sometimes, but I would make it work. And mind control.
They can't all be Neapolitan ice cream.
They can't. But you always get something that maybe one person likes. But the way I sort of started to go about it is I ask everybody what they want. What's the kinks you would like to see, and what's the stuff that you you're not going to tell everybody about, but you don't want to see there at all. So I instantly get to go, okay, all this stuff is just off limits to me. Mm-hmm. And this is the stuff that like is the extras, and here's the core idea. And I just go, and how do I make this turn me on?
Right.
And how do I make it so it works for that? And it becomes this challenge that's half just pure self-indulgence that I get paid for, which I don't think anyone paying me would be upset about. But it's also this sort of intellectual challenge of I'm basically looking at everything to try and find some form of inspiration out of it. And when I get basically the whole thing dropped in my lap, it's both easier because, I have all these pieces, but like you said, it's someone's got like, oh, this person's got this job, or this person's got this scenario, or oh, this sister, or this nephew, or not nephew for me at all, but like you've got this setup where you already know these things. There's things you can't change, but it's sort of like how like some people really like to write the poetry form villanelle, which just scares me to hell because it's got a very complicated rhyming scheme, syllables, everything. I can't do it.
Okay.
But having that being constrained, once I got past the initial fear of no one's going to be satisfied that they paid me for this, there's this feeling of, wait, I have to do this to make this fit into piece here. Wouldn't this be hot? And sometimes I literally just have to restrain myself from giving people twice what they paid for because it's just, they give me too much. Like Inner Damon basically got a freebie out of me because the story was too good. I had to keep going. But it's this wonderful feeling of just, when you write a story and it's just purely your own idea, you only know that one person's going to like it. But when you write a commission that's from some place that you can feel a connection to, you know two people are going to like it. And that's double.
What a fascinating and wonderful sort of sentiment. Yeah.
Because you write a story for someone et cetera. Like so often, I'm sure you've experienced this. You make a manip and you're like, will anyone else find this hot? Am I just doing this into the wind?
Yeah.
But when you know at least one other person out there is waiting for this, and you only even have to make them satisfied and it's a win, it kind of frees you up from worrying about like no one will mention this on the forum, or no one will even care on the garden, or it doesn't matter because that one person out there is like, please, yes, more.
Mm-hmm.
And that is frankly more than I could ask for with some stuff.
That's tremendous. So the last one that we have on this list, is this also a commission, Awakening a Superheroine's Escape from Mental Domination?
It was. This one was, I have some people that basically say, I want this exactly. And I'm like, to be clear here, none of this is wrong. You work with somebody, whatever they give, et cetera, the process works.
Right.
But some people are just very much like, I have this sort of vague idea and I want to see what you do with it. And this was sort of more along those lines, and just the fun of, you have a lot of stories of people that are, dominated, captured, like locked away, used, droned, whatever.
Right.
But just when you have someone locked up and used and controlled for so long, what happens when just suddenly just no one there? The lights are turned off, the doors are open. What happens next? Is that really what's happening? And just it's the thing I really love about superhero stories as a whole is you can literally, it's so cross genre. You can't say like superhero comics are thought of as their own genre, but you've got horror, you've got fantasy, you've got sci-fi, you literally have anything. And the drama you can pull from that, and just what situations are just normal that people have to bend with, and just that one was especially fun for me.
Oh yeah, that's tremendous. I really enjoy what you were saying about the constraints actually unlocking creativity. That's one of those like art out of adversity sort of philosophies.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I've found commissions to be challenging and in a lot of ways. But hearing you talk about it, like I can totally see what you're saying. I'm like, oh yeah, like if you get over this hurdle, or if you look at it like that, then it unlocks this whole.
It can still be terrifying,
right?
It can still be absolutely almost every time there's a spot where I'm like 2 paragraphs before the end where I'm like, and this is where no one will ever commission me again.
Yeah,
but you get over that too.
And like there are times when like I've been approached and just turned it down and just said I'm not for this. Like I'm just not the right person for this. Like I've got nothing here.
I've had to do that.
So I mean I'm sure that will happen occasionally, but yeah.
Thankfully, most of the time, because people are, theoretically, they're searching out the person they know will write a story that they want. Most of the time when you go, like, I've had one commissioner that it offered me an idea, and I was just like, I like the core of what you've got here, but I feel uncomfortable for just my own stuff. This exact idea, but what if we do this? Right. And that became one of their favorite stories they ever paid me to do.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Speaking of your own stories, we've got some things that we're going to talk about here as far as like the Midas City side stories go. So tell us about this and how these things do slot into your greater mythos.
Well, first I didn't write this on there, but every time I bring up Midas City, I have to basically thank Decker for the name that I stole from you. Because ages ago, you don't even write on MC Stories anymore, though I've heard that you're out there, and like kudos to you, you're a great writer and you're awesome. But they came up with the name Midas City, and then we were bullshitting one day, and it's like, hey, what are they in the same place? Maybe we do some kind of a crossover. And then I used the name, so I kept using it, and I give credit, but I stole it from you, and I'm so sorry. It's so brilliant because it lets everything be MC for blank, like MC University, MC PD. It's all right. MC. So I'm so sorry, but also thank you.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
It really is. But part of the fun that I've gotten to do somewhat more recently is that like the Silver Hill stories are all like, with a few exceptions here or there, you're stuck in Sarah's head. And for better or worse, that means you get a very narrow view of the world. And so like with Candy Pink Rose, I was able to introduce a new character that Sarah may not ever interact with because she's just a wine sommelier. I can never pronounce the words I use in my stories, and I'm so sorry. And we get to see a whole different a character who still has powers, who still has use to the organization that like Silver Hill was a part of for quite a bit of time. And we also get to see Pink, who everyone that enjoys any kind of ditzy, bimbo, etc. She's been a fan favorite forever. And so we get to bring her back. We get to bring this new character in. And we also get to see a little bit more of Jesse Colleton doing terrible stuff. And it's just so fun to get to explore things that people like and keep saying, I want to see more of this. But I used that character. I used that. I'd used all that I could, but then getting a new excuse to be like, oh, well, here's this. You get a little bit more of it.
That. Yeah.
Like Rewired is basically the same thing, but for Mindbore, who was a big fan favorite in Silver Eclipse. Her whole shtick being, oh yeah, I give people fetishes and use them to control their brains. But like, I need fetishes to work with. I need a character to work with on them because like, I do. I felt like I'd used the character up, but then I hadn't written anything new with her for like at least to use her like core idea since like 2007. So turns out over I don't even want to think how long that was because that's a lot of years. You build up the well,
right?
Just a few.
It's a fascinating aspect. I'm just dipping my toes into the waters of like long form, staying with the same characters, story in, story out kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine or just listen to you talk about some of the challenges that you some of the challenges that do arise from the point where you reach a point where you just feel like I've gone through all the ideas I've had. Like, where do I go now?
Thankfully, just in case anyone worries that even though like I've written all these words, I've literally have a note file that's I just call it compiled notes, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of things I want to do that I haven't had time for. So I promise, there's always more ideas than I have time.
You're in good shape. Well, it's like we were saying earlier, creativity is a muscle.
It really is.
You exercise it, it'll work.
It definitely is. And just one last of those Midas City side stories in case you missed it. So Lightstorm in a Bottle was partially a birthday present and partially I got paid for it, which is totally cheating.
Okay.
But the chance to look back at the Sled Squad was a really fun idea because they're basically, you have the 5 senses using mind control in different ways. And this just gives us a glance at Whisper again, but also a little bit of Saber, who are sound and taste respectively, and just this chance to get a look at just, oh, here's an established heroine, not established in other stories, but just like in the world itself, and what happens when you just run afoul of this, when you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now the Syndicate is a very powerful organization in Midas City, at least it was always implied to be, but getting to actually show why it's a bad thing to just be a superhero in a place where something like that exists was a lot of fun. And just getting excuse to look at the stuff that I like. Whenever you're writing, like 90% of what you know about a world doesn't ever end up on the page.
Right.
And I can't always promise that I did that much actual pre-writing for Silver Girl, but nowadays I have, and this lets me put a little bit of that 90% on there.
That's a really cool aspect, because I know exactly what you're saying as far as like world building and stuff like that goes. You spend so much time filling in enough of the details for yourself that you feel like you can confidently kind of move and operate through that and have your footing. And
yeah.
But that aspect that you're talking about, where you have all this stuff, but it doesn't really relate to the story you're telling right then. And so any opportunity you have to come back and dip into that and to share those aspects that you have known about forever with other people is always really rewarding.
It really is. And all that gets to lead around to the fact that the 6th book of Silver Girl, which is the there's 10 in total of the original series, which is crazy considering how big book 5 was, that it actually goes on that long. But so way back when, I used to do after TMR, or The Memory Remains, I have my own abbreviations for things, so I'll try to not actually fall into them.
Okay.
I started actually reading comics because I'd only just seen adaptations before, and I thought, oh wait, before all these major events, they have all these comics to lead up to it.
Right.
So I started, thinking, hey, I need to get on this. I can show like other characters' perspectives, other things going on in the world. So Inkslick Preamble was what I gave to the name to the series of stories that go before Ink-Soaked Penumbra. And if you notice something horrible there, it's that because
they're both ISP.
Yep. The crazy thing is, the shorts before it, which calling them shorts was more fair before because together it's not short at all. Right. They used to just be the stories that led up to ISP, and I didn't have anything for them. And I talked with my cover artists for a long time because they're the ones that are putting the names on the covers. And it's like, what kind of a name do we? Well, it's a preamble. It's a prelude. And we're throwing names around, and we just agree on Inkslick Preamble sounds great. And I'm just like, you know what? We've been going over this for like 2 weeks. Do it. And then I realized it's ISP again. So that's terrible.
Can't win them all.
But that's out now, which has the compilation of the 7 stories that lead up to Ink-Soaked Penumbra, which the first one is dropping this Tuesday. So that's coming up. And even though they have the same abbreviation, the covers look totally different. So there shouldn't be a confusion there.
Yes, I'm sure the marketplace will sort it out.
Oh, goodness, I hope not. I mean, I'm sure it'll be fine. But you've indulged me rambling on about my stuff for a while, and we've not talked for entirely too long, at least, in podcast form, but you've been up to a lot.
A lot. You wouldn't necessarily know it to look at my website, but yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot going on right now. Like I said to you earlier, 6 to 8 months from now, gangbusters.
Oh, but man, I'm looking at all this stuff you're working on, and I just want to hear about all of it, but we got to start somewhere. So apparently you're working on, what's this about, a Decisive Results sequel?
Yeah, so I've had a video, like one video that I came across a while ago, and I was just looking at this thing going, wow, I could really do something with this. Similar to that scene, like that sort of keystone middle scene in Decisive Results.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got to thinking about what it could be and how the story might go, I started finding other bits and pieces of video, and I'm like, oh wait, I could bring this in because it's got the same actress, and I could show a scene from this, and then that would lead into this other thing with that same actress, and then that could ultimately lead to this big scene, and then I just got really lucky and found maybe 6 or 7 different video pieces that I saw a way to meld together, to unify in this story. And I'd been thinking about that for a little while, and there was one aspect of it that I hadn't figured out and I needed to. And then one day, as it happens, I had this flash of inspiration. I said, wait a minute, I know how to do it. And so that was when I emailed Tabico and I said, hey, listen, I've got an idea for a sequel to Decisive Results, and here's sort of the loose synopsis, and if you think that this is a good direction, I think that we could do a follow-up, and there's a lot of fun ideas. And so that was just kind of how it started. And so we banged out an outline. Just we had kind of the premise and sort of knew where it started and where it would go and end and all that, and then we kind of did an outline and figured out the beats, came up with some sort of B-plot storyline stuff, and then we wrote a treatment. Just go through each scene and kind of write a synopsis for each scene and whatever details are sort of important for that. And we're finished with that, and I have started writing the script. And so once I'm done with this first pass, it'll go to Tabico, and then we'll revise and just kind of figure out anything that we want to change. And then once we're happy with the script, then I can start putting all these pieces of video together. And I guess the big news is that it's the same sort of crew from Decisive Results. It's like Mrs. R and Mr. H and those people doing their devious mind controlling things. So I don't think that'll be a huge spoiler. And the other thing that I will say at this point is that as of right now, admittedly it's not done yet, but as of right now, we're going to be able to tell quite a bit more of the story in video fashion this time, which we're really, really excited about. We're very, very happy about some of the things we've been able to find and weave into our story in a way that we think is going to make it really exciting.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that anyone felt cheated by the fact that some of it was in text communication, because one, you don't have a massive budget, and two, it really did work very well to sort of make the sinister, removed nature of it. But from the sound of it, this is this your most ambitious video project?
Easily, yeah, easily. It'll be. I mean, I won't know final running time, but we're talking at least twice as much video storytelling as last time, if not more.
And is this related to the small project that you and Tabico put out at the end of last year, early this year?
Remind me, which one?
Let me find it, because I don't remember its name. When you first saw that, I thought it was related to this, but I didn't know all these details. Right. Let's grab you. For some reason, Tabico's blog only opens for me in Chrome nowadays.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about.
Add attention.
Add attention. No. So I should just say that that is all Tabico. Basically, what she did is basically she just took a little video thing that I'd already done and just incorporated it into this manip and story that she had done.
Oh.
So that it was totally it was just totally one of those things. She emailed me, she says, "Hey, I did this. Do you mind that I used it?" And I said, "No, of course not. Please do more." More. Cool. I said yes, more. Is basically what I said.
So I just, had to give a little bit nod to both of your directions for having that project collaborated on together.
No, I wish I could say I collaborated more than I did, but honestly, what I wish is that she would just do a lot more of that. But I know she's super, super busy. But I love the fact that she's dabbling in animation and stuff like that. That just fills me with glee.
And she's the one giving you 60% of the credit, so neither of you are good at this.
No, but that's the thing about her, which is great when you have it in collaboration. The thing about working with her is that there's just there's no ego. We're both there to to just make the material, like make the thing that we're creating the best that it can be, and we don't care about anything else. And so that makes everything smooth.
Sounds like a really great working relationship.
Yeah, it has been.
So what's this Our Girl Brooke project you're working on?
I teased this on the Black Room 20. Okay, so Brooke she's around the MC scene. She's known as Finding My Way Forever, like on Tumblr and Twitter and places like that.
Yeah.
And she's a real mind control enthusiast. And I've had this photo set of her forever in a day, and always had kind of a loose clue of what to do with it. But I talked about it on the Black Room 20, making progress with it, getting work done. And then I just got sidetracked with other things. And so I've come back to it. I've come back to it in the last month or so, and I'm actually like doing the work. Like I'm actually doing the editing, doing the video, the effects stuff and all that kind of thing. But we're basically riffing on the sort of the loose story that I'm promoting it with, is that the idea is that Brooke is watching that famous pleasure unit brainwashing scene from Our Man Flint.
Mm.
And she's watching that scene, and, perhaps there's been some aspects added to it that she wasn't aware of. And so she's really into it, and hence Our Girl Brooke. So it's a really, really fun. She sent me a terrific photo series. And I think it's gonna really, really be a lot of fun once I'm finished with it. There's some really sexy stuff in there.
Awesome. I mean, I've seen Brooke's work before, and I've seen yours, so I don't see any reason those two wouldn't work together. Right. Was that a photo shoot that she already had, or did you collaborate on getting the poses, or how did that go? Yeah,
so we did collaborate. I mean, it's not like we were on a Discord call or something, and I was saying, the camera should be higher and to the right. Like, it wasn't like that. But we talked about it ahead of time. And I just said, okay, I think what would be great here is if we had you watching a laptop. I can do a lot with those kinds of photos. It would be great if we had photos of your face looking into the laptop. It would be great if we had photos of like the laptop screen, sort of like behind your head looking into it. Maybe you laying on a bed. And, we just talked about the imagery. And then she went away after that and pulled everything together and sent me probably 20 or 30 images to pull from.
Awesome.
So a lot of material. And I think I said this in the Black Room 20 as well. This is the first time I've really had an opportunity to do, like, where I have collaborated with a model and we have said, okay, we think that we want to create this. Okay, so for that we would need these pictures. And then the model went off, did the pictures, sent them to me, and now I'm taking 3 years to put it all together. So other than that part of it, it's a fantastic opportunity. I'm so thankful for it. I'm so sorry that it's taken me so long to get to it, but it's one of those things that the ideas for it, for whatever reason, for this project, like, I've really, really needed specific pieces of inspiration that have not come quickly. Like, okay, so like I have this general idea, but how do I solve this problem? Or how do I, like what's the end point where we get from here to here, and that sort of thing. Those things have been harder than I thought of initially going into it. So it's kind of been challenging, and also just, getting pulled away and distracted by other things. But it's one of the 5 or 6 things that I'm really actively working on right now.
Does it feel like you've made it past most of the rage or roadblocks? Obviously I'm not trying to hold you to a release date.
Right. I would say yes. I would say that like there were sort of 2 major roadblocks, and one of them I am past, and then the other one I don't have to deal with it just yet, so I'm not past it yet, but I at least have a clue. Like, I've got a strategy for what I think I'm going to do to sort of get over that hurdle. Yeah. So I'm pretty confident at this point.
So, I'm sure that we'll all get to benefit from all this hard work you're putting through.
I hope so. And I just thank Brooke for being so patient, because almost every time she chats, she's like, so how's that photo series that I did, how's that coming along? And I'm like, I did a little bit of Photoshop work on it. Like, I'm trying to, like where's your homework? Like that kind of thing. But it's been great lately, because I can finally say, like, oh, it's coming, like, progress, like, it's coming along. Here's what I'm doing. Here's how it's going. That sort of thing.
Hey, Brooke, if you're listening, and you should be, then hey, you get to this recording anytime. You can just copy the time index from when Callidus said that, and just say it back to him with that, and you're set.
That's true. That's true. I'm definitely committing myself now. Like I'm making myself answerable. So yeah, I'm on the line now. But that's fine. I actually probably one of the reasons that it's taken so long is that I didn't just set a deadline, which turns out it's a really good thing for me to do.
It can be helpful, but at the same time, it's not like this is your only collaborative work, though, because you've been doing some collaborative writing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So, basically, what happened is Connie K and I decided that we were going to start writing, for all intents and purposes, a monthly comic. Now, we don't have the artwork to go along with it, but in our minds, that's what we're writing a monthly comic. We decided to work on this monthly comic called Captain Jet Jones, Star Ranger. And the current story is called Slaves of the Suzerain. And it is, hopefully the title tells you exactly what it is. It is a throwback pulp space opera, retro sci-fi in the vein of old school Flash Gordon, like Buster Crabbe, Flash Gordon, and Buck Rogers. It is that mixed with a bit of sexy 70s Buck Rogers, mixed with a bit of swinging 60s Star Trek, and a whole lot of mind control. And I'm trying to think of a way to say this that will embarrass her with maximum impact. It has been the most fun I have ever had doing anything creative in my life. And we are just having a blast dreaming up Jet Jones stories and executing on that. We're 2 issues in right now. Slaves of the Suzerain is going to go 4 issues, and then starting on issue 5, we'll be on to the next story. And it's phenomenal. We are having so much fun with these characters and all the zany situations that we can throw at them.
What got you two to work on? Because I mean, monthly comic series, that could be so many different things. What was it a mutual interest in the pulpy sci-fi, or what got you both going in this direction?
Yeah. So without going too far into the weeds, again, I think on maybe Black Room 20 or somewhere in the latter episodes before we went on hiatus, I had this manip called, I think I was calling it like Star Princess or something like that.
Yeah.
But I had this manip idea that was going to tie into I had this notion of doing sort of like a Rocky Jones, Space Ranger, Flash Gordon kind of storyline around this image of what I perceived to be this princess from the stars being brainwashed by an off-screen evil queen character and that sort of thing. So that idea that's been out there for a while. Like if you go to the project section on my website, like that's been up there forever. Mm. And then I came across another image set that, to my mind, sort of tied in with this. And I thought, this could be like some sort of heroine rescuer that's, come to intercede in the situation. But of course, complications ensue. And those 2 ideas together is where it morphed from basically just being a manip about this princess from the stars being brainwashed into a little bit of a storyline began to ferment around this sort of female Flash Gordon kind of character. And I wrote up a bunch of stuff. As a matter of fact, I even think I said on the show, like at the time on the show, I was like, oh, I've got all these new images I've found a way to pull in and it's going to be great and blah, blah, blah. And what happened is that I basically just went away and wrote so much that I'm like, oh, the images aren't enough anymore. Like I can't possibly have enough images to do all this. But anyway, so I did a bunch of images and stuff like that. And then I showed them to Connie. And she got really excited, and it was obvious that she had a huge interest in this kind of retro sci-fi thing, and so I was just feeling like, hey, maybe there's something we could do together. It seems like we're both really into it, and I was just lucky enough that she said yes.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of luck with that. I mean, let's see, you're working with Tabico, with Brooke, with Connie. What obviously, I've tried to collaborative work before.
And Iago. I did a thing with Iago and Tabico. That was actually my very first collaboration, was the 2 of them.
I completely, and that whole just legacy of theirs, that series that's...
Oh, yeah, that's amazing.
Amazing, but just like how your creative process at this point has to have evolved through these collaborations you've worked on. Like, I don't want to like downplay your own creative work. We're going to be getting to something you've done that's really awesome soon here. But just like, what would you say like is the most important thing you've learned in how you work with these people, or just like, just I feel like that you must have something very unique to say about the fact that you've done so much really big, really, like, at least I would hope, massively responded to work with other creators. Like, how has that grown your own craft, or how have you learned how to work with this? Like, what do you say is the biggest thing you brought from this experience that you keep having?
Always collaborate with someone more talented than you. That's the secret.
Well, then who do you have left to collaborate with?
That's what I do every time. I just find somebody who's better than me and I collaborate with them. The thing for me is that it's just the question is, like, are we both sort of on the same page as far as the material goes? Like, if we're going to have like basic disagreements about, like, so the character goes here and then turns right, and then the other person's like, well, I think they should turn left. Like, it's probably not going to work. Yeah. So I've always just basically looked for somebody who I thought had great sensibilities with the material, or that matched my own sensibilities. Like, that's always what I was sort of on the lookout for. And then the other question is just, can we gel creatively? Like when we start brainstorming and coming up with ideas, does it work, or do we end up just sort of clashing on what, whether the character turns right or left or whatever. And so the first part I've been pretty diligent about in terms of trying to find collaborators that I thought were a good match for me. And then the second part, I've been really, really lucky. None more so than with Connie. I was telling somebody else on Discord recently, we were talking about this, and they were asking how it was. And it's a million fucking laughs. I mean, it's her and I sitting on Discord and just talking about, and then this could happen, and then this could happen, and then, just giggling ourselves silly as we just dream up these horrible situations to throw at our heroes.
You'd feel guilty if it wasn't so fun.
It's ridiculously fun. I hope the people reading it are having half as much fun as we are writing it.
Well, I'm unfortunate one of the people who've gotten around to reading it yet, but I've seen a lot of very positive responses. So I'd say that even if not everyone's going along for the ride, that you're definitely succeeding somewhere there.
I definitely appreciate that. I like to think so. I like to think that, we're finding an audience for this, because we really want an audience for this. We kind of have the back pocket idea that if there's enough interest out there and everything, that we could actually maybe find a way to do a proper comic book, that we'd love to do that. Like, we would love to see this brought to life and rendered in a comic form of some type.
I'll have to read it so I can tell more people they need to too.
Thank you.
But enough being around the bush. I've been trying to draw this out to try and make you build up the suspense. You released your first, no collaborations, no photos, just you, word processor, the screen. Yep. Last year, Compliance and Acquisition. Tell me a little bit about it. I read it and it was amazing, but pretend I did.
Okay. So Compliance and Acquisition is the synopsis is a submissive personal assistant helps her CEO mistress navigate an insidious corporate conspiracy. So there's a few things going on here. I have had it in my mind for a while that I wanted to write something and put it on the archive. It's something I've aspired to for a good long while, and it's something that I felt very, very intimidated by. Part of that is the reverence with which I hold people like, Trilby and Tabico, Iago, Thrall. And they've been so influential on me. And I knew that anything that I was going to do was going to kind of be playing, I was going to be playing in their sandbox, in effect. Yeah. And I felt like if I wasn't playing in their sandbox and bringing my A game, I should probably just stay in my own sandbox until I got it figured out, I guess. So I had built this goal up into a kind of a scary, challenging thing. And I had batted around some ideas over the years and thought about some different things. And really what set me off was Cat and Mouse. When I read Cat and Mouse and I saw the brilliant use of the sort of thriller genre in terms of pacing and cliffhangers, tension and release, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I read that and I said, I've got to do this. I have got to throw my hat in this ring. I know that I have something to say sort of in this arena. And that was the story that really galvanized me to write a proper thriller. And so that's where I really got kind of serious. And I started saying, okay, well, I've got these ideas and I'm going to just have to pick one to develop and so on and so forth.
Well, you definitely did a great job. I mean, very few people can say their first story ended up so intense and polished on just the first as it goes out. I mean, I definitely can't. No one look back at the original drafts of Silver Girl, please. Forget it. So
no one looked at the original drafts of this either. I mean, bear in mind, this was like 2 years in the making. I basically got to write it 3 times.
Which, I mean, I got to see some earlier stuff, and it was still not bad. But this still, like, no offense, blew everything you showed me before away. It's seriously amazing. How did you feel like you got response-wise for this? Because, I mean, it has to be exciting to have something like, you were so worried about this sandbox of breaking into this new ground, and how did that go for you?
It was immensely gratifying. I got amazing email on this from people, from friends, people I know, and from people that I was meeting for the first time that were responding to this. It was absolutely amazing. Iago wrote me basically wrote a collegiate essay and sent it to me in email form, like where he just did this really deep dive and was just talking about all these things that he liked or just going into mechanics and things. He's like, oh, I see, like, where you're doing this, and I love the way that you pay this off, and it was just that kind of stuff. But the main thing is that people really got it. And the 2 things that I heard a lot of that were really, really gratifying were that, number one, the people loved the characters, that they really, really got into Lily and Samantha. And then the second thing was that they found themselves just, sitting on the edge of their seat during the week, waiting for the next update to go up, waiting to find out what happened next. Those 2 things were immensely satisfying to hear.
And it's a story that does such a good job with that same, all of the heat is incredibly hot, but the characters are really likable. And in order for the heat to get hotter, something bad's going to happen. Yeah. And that whole time, as a reader, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my God, Lily and Samantha are great. They're amazing people. I want them to succeed. But just maybe if they didn't.
Right. But just maybe. I'm reminded, I think, after the first update went out, I think Vanderbilt sent me an email and said something to the effect of, like, Lily and Samantha's relationship is sufficiently lovely and believable that it should be highly exploitable for betrayal later on, or something like that.
Oh gosh, yes.
Like, there's a person that knows how these stories are put together right there.
Oh yeah, no, that is incredibly true. That angle, just this story is one of those ones that doesn't come along very often, and when you see it and you just go, like, don't get me wrong, all the stories we've talked about today are amazing. I mean, so many others. Whenever I like something, it's almost like the rest of the stuff doesn't exist while I'm talking about it. But just this sort of, like, you bring up the thriller aspect of it. It's not exactly like it's been absent from these stories. I mean, plenty of people are doing it. We've talked about a few, but just this sort of raw, visceral, like, oh, here's these really nice, sweet people, and we're going to just destroy them utterly. That's, I remember, if I remember correctly, you had some complications with just how much you were destroying these poor characters.
Yes, as I've said famously, so spoiler warning. Again, quoting Vanderbilt, he says, so you went for the fly-by-night ending as opposed to the Trilby ending. And I said, yes, that's fair. But that was not the plan. The plan was the Trilby ending. And Tabico teased me relentlessly. She was the last person to sort of read it privately before it went to the archive. And her the opening line of her email after she finished it was, "You big softy." And and it's true. I am a hopeless romantic. And as I have said in other places, I intended for the story to end with Lily and Samantha would have circumvented the corporate skullduggery. They would have foiled the insidious plot. Samantha's position would have been restored. She would have been vindicated. The day would have been saved. And then she would have returned to Tiffany, the evil hypnodom, and continued her enslavement, much to Lily's dismay. That was the ending. That was always the ending. And I took a swing at it and really didn't like it. It just wasn't working, wasn't firing at all. And so I changed up the timing and I moved it to a different location. And I made it sort of went from a big surprise on Lily. Like I think in the original version, it was just, like 3 months later, Samantha just walks through the door one night with Tiffany in tow. And basically like, this is my goddess. She lives with us now, and you can either serve her or you can leave. Like it was sort of that kind of vibe. And then I changed it and made it this whole like investigation sort of process. Like Lily was noticing Samantha was doing these things that wasn't adding up, and she was starting to lie to Lily, and Lily was getting suspicious. And so it was about Lily unraveling the mystery and discovering the truth in the second version.
And what's funny about it is that since Lily is, sort of, for more details in the story, the most common game they play together is with Lily as a secret agent. The fact that she herself has that brilliant mind, I love how that tied that together, because it means that I don't know, I want to bring in the word diegesis, but I don't know how I can do it for this. But the way that both the fictional world and the fictional world roll together is just beautiful for how that worked. Was that always sort of the end? Was that something that just naturally, because someone points out that, the way, Agent Lily acting again, but was that something that sort of you realized as you were changing the way that worked out, or was that just a pleasant sort of way that wraps together?
Yeah, it sort of evolved organically. Yeah, it was one of those aspects that as I was writing the opening scene and really getting into the Agent Lily game and just thinking about how they would have put the pieces in place in order to play this game and where their influences would have come from and all that, it just led to all these other kinds of different ideas. And it, in a lot of ways, it taught me so much about the characters. So, like, the Agent Lily game comes from Samantha. It's a fantasy of hers, but it's informed by Lily's sort of taste and personality and things like that. And so you can see how they've collaborated and how they each bring different things into it. And, so there's things like the way that Agent Lily, is counting steps when she's on her mission. Like she knows how many paces it is between these two distances, because that seems like very tradecrafty. Like that seems something that some super spy would do, that they would know everything down to the detail, all the distances mapped out in their minds and that kind of thing. But it's sort of an OCD tick of Samantha's. Samantha knows how many paces it is from the door of her office to the elevator, because she walks it, every 5 days a week. And she's one of those people that keeps track of things. She's a counter. She's a note taker. And so just those sorts of details sort of like threading into each other, the way that, you see Agent Lily doing it within the sort of the trance game, and then you see Samantha doing it in waking life, and you kind of begin to see how these things thread into each other. So all that stuff sort of was growing organically as the story was going along. And as I was writing, I was finding different ways of sort of calling back to it and, or underlining or revealing different aspects of the characters that were sort of expressed in the game. And from that, and just me getting so excited about it, and it was you and I talking that one night. I'd reached this point because in the original version, like the second act goes in a wildly different direction, which I don't know how much of it I know I told you about it. I think you read some of it too. I can't remember now.
Yeah, I remember some of the earlier stuff. I remember when I was reading, I was like, wait a second. this is the story we talked about, isn't it?
Yeah, because it was Crazy Town. I mean, it just like they just go to this entirely other place, and like I knew, you know, coming back to it a few weeks later and reading it, I knew it didn't work. And that was why I just put it down for so long, because I was just so thoroughly depressed over hitting this roadblock. But you and I were talking one night, and I don't remember how it came up, but at some point in the conversation, you just said something about how much you loved the whole sort of Agent Lily thing, and it would sort of be a shame not to come back to it at some point. And that was like the key kind of breakthrough, because it was like, wait a second, well, like, you know, what if Agent Lily goes on a real mission? Like, what if it's not just a game? Like, what if she's really going out there to accomplish something? And then it just kind of brought everything full circle, and that was really the key to getting out of that quagmire at the 9-month mark and actually doing something.
I'm glad I was able to help.
Oh, you were tremendous. You were tremendous.
And while there's still more to talk about on this, I have to tease Tabico and you a little bit.
Okay.
Because it's hard to tell now, because all of our memories suck. And like, there's no way we can remember stuff that happened back in 2008 with any accuracy.
Right.
But the last story Trilby actually released, and it was all basically at once, was Taker, which actually ends super wholesomely. Like, it's all set up. Like, characters are going to die. This woman's going to be basically forced to give this other woman a bunch of mind control drugs and help her with this evil conspiracy.
Right.
Everything ends up completely happily, and that was the last story that like he released in full and just in period. So you pulled the Trilby.
I wonder if that was in the back of my mind somewhere, because boy, I tell you, it was definitely. I mean, it was not the plan. It was like the ending. Yeah. The ending for this story. I went through the 2 versions I told you about, and then the ending for this story was I just sat down and said, okay, like I tried writing 2 things that didn't work. I'm just going to sit down and write. Like the first thing is Lily walks through the door. Type. Okay, now what? You know, and I just basically just typed, and that last chapter 10 or whatever it is, came out more or less as it is. And so it's one of those things that like that was the thing that was in me. Like that was the thing that wanted to come out, and the other two didn't. But as I have admitted, somewhere along the way in writing this story, I fell in love with Lily and Samantha. I love them slightly less than they love each other. You know what I mean?
No, totally.
And I just could not. I could not end the story without them being happy and together. I could not bring myself to do it.
But you also didn't just magically flip the switch on everything. Where we leave them at the end there, I'm not saying it's like the most precarious spot or anything, but like, at least I, for one, appreciate the fact that there's still a process. Like they're both still growing together and making what they've got now work. And I think that leads very well into the fact that you've got something else to tell us today.
Yes, that's true. So a lot of people, as soon as the story was over, they were like, are you going to do more? And the answer is yes, I already am. I've already written chapter 1 of the next Lily and Samantha adventure, which is tentatively titled Working Holiday, which you read last night. And
it's amazing. Like, seriously, you all are, that is what I've said you're going to be jealous about, because I've already gotten to see where things are going, and I'm not saying anything. Anything at all said about this going to be from him, you're going to love it, though.
Thank you. That is very encouraging. I've got this idea of where things can go for them. I've got 3 stories outlined, and I kind of settled a while ago on Working Holiday being the follow-up, which I talked about a little bit on my blog. Like I had an idea for a really direct sequel to this that was sort of dealing with what are the consequences of the situation they had with Tiffany. You know, what happens now that has resolved the way that it has. I have an outline for that, but it's one of those things where I thought, if I go into that next, I felt like I'd be sort of drawing a box around what a Lily and Samantha story could be. Whereas if I did the story Working Holiday, I felt like I could draw a much bigger box. It's like, okay, so now it doesn't just have to be these kinds of stories, but Lily and Samantha can also have these other sorts of adventures that that kind of weave in and out of the same lane that compliance and acquisition drives in sometimes.
Yeah, because the sooner you make the first time you show the same thing twice in a row, especially if it's right after each other, people, it's like you and everyone else is expecting that's all you're going to get from here. And instead of having the wide open field, you have to struggle to expand that boundary. So I think you made a good call on that.
I appreciate that. That was very much on my mind, was just trying to, I guess, sort of shrewdly give myself as much latitude as possible moving forward. But yeah, so I'm really excited about Working Holiday. There's 2 other stories that I've got outlined that, I mean, no guarantees. I mean, I may get to the end of Working Holiday and have a completely different idea. It's like, oh, wait a second. Now I see this, but I at least have some grounding for where things can go. And one of the comments that I got that was really interesting about compliance and acquisition was that people really, which you alluded to just a second ago, I'm reminded of, people really dug the fact that there wasn't sort of like a wave a magic wand and the turmoil is over, or the danger has subsided. People really dug the fact that Lily and Samantha deal with the trauma of what they experienced. And I got to say that really probably was inspired a lot by SoVeryFascinated. The way that he treats his characters, and the way that they deal with the fallout of what they've experienced. I think that was probably the biggest single influence on that. And also just wanting to have things feel real. If this is the real world and you're invested in these characters in a real way, then you expect that there's going to be some stuff to deal with. But that aspect of it has unlocked so much. Just thinking about, if people have experienced that, then how do they respond if this new thing occurs to them? Because it's not like an old TV show where this week's episode has no memory of last week's episode. And that's been really interesting in the sense that it has driven a lot of creative decisions and a lot of plotting. Like there's some things that you can get into and you just say, yeah, no, that wouldn't work. They would never do that because they've been through this thing and it affected them so much that they just wouldn't do that. But what would they do instead? And so on it goes.
And what things would they do because they've done it before?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I'm right there with you 100% of the way. And I feel like you have set up a situation wherein, whether we get a bunch of more stories with them or not, you've established that even if you might end up going softy on us, no one's going to be disappointed with what happens. Which you have, which is fair. I mean, you are not the first person who has done that. I've taken back some things.
Right. Well, it's one of those things that I think, I mean, I've done Trilby type stuff. I mean, I've done like dark, pathic, evil, horrible ending type stuff on my site for years, all the time. I mean, most of my stuff is probably that way. But I suppose that I'm just going to have to keep practicing a little bit before I'm ready to make that leap as far as the long-term stuff goes.
Plus, it's different to do it once they become your babies. Because, I could do all those stories I mentioned before. I could do some really horrible things to them, but I've done some really mean things to Sarah, and some people would say that, how dare I even suggest this? But it's a lot. I have to think about it when I do it to her. Yeah.
I totally get that. I mean, it's strange the way that, and I think it sounds silly maybe to people who aren't creative themselves, but these characters live in your minds, and they become sort of no different than friends that don't live in the same town as you and that you just don't see often. I mean, they really inhabit you. They have a presence in your mind that is so rich and detailed. And same thing like with Jet Jones. Connie and I are talking just all the time about just the way that, like, I realized today that, Jet says this like this, or, Jet stands like this when she does that, those kinds of things. It's really fascinating how rich and real, your imagination can be when you dive into some of this stuff.
And this is just the start of you doing stuff like this. So gosh, I can't wait for another 15 years when I can pick your brain about where you are then.
Yeah, I hope
you're not allowed to stop.
I hope it's good. I got to tell you that it's really, really gratifying. I appreciate everything that you said and that everybody else has said. I deeply appreciate you helping me get through that. I mean, I think you were the first person that read a single word of it, and that original chapter 1. I mean, just in terms of, grammar and structure. Like, you were such a huge help early on, and just really helping me get some fundamental craft to put words on the page and say what I was trying to say. You were so instrumental in that. I was so lucky to be able to bend your ear as many times as I did to just help myself along. Mentioning Connie again, I was so demoralized when I wrote, the second version of that ending, and it just wasn't working. I was just so demoralized and ready to just quit and say, like, I'm just not cut out for this. Like, I'm not cut out to be this long form writer. And it was really Connie's encouragement, just saying that was a good idea. You do something with it, finish it, So that was with a little help from my friends, I was able to eke something out, but I desperately want to keep working at it and keep getting better at it. I felt like I grew so much doing this, and I'm really, really anxious to keep doing that.
Well, I'm really glad I could help, and I think I can speak for a lot of us in saying that I'm really glad Connie was there to help, and that we have all of this wonderful shared, and so much of writing's collaborative when you only got one name on it, but just even the stuff that's only got your name on the byline, I know we're all going to be very happy with what's ahead for us.
Thank you. It's your fault. Quite a bit of this is your fault, actually. Obviously, as I've just said, this story, you were like the midwife, helping me bring this story into the world. But like the Jet Jones thing, like you are the one who put Connie and I together. You're the thread that connects us. And I can tell you for a fact, because she told me that I could tell you this for a fact, but I can tell you for a fact that Connie says that there would be no Connie K stories without Madam Kistulot. You were so instrumental in her development and interest in writing erotic mind control fiction, and you were, absolutely indispensable. This story would not be out there were it not for all those conversations and brainstorming sessions and me just asking you, what do I do now? And so yeah, big hats off to you, MK.
I'm really glad. I'm really being a encouraging, growing part of this community is like one of my number one goals. So I am really glad that I was able to do that. Like I feel like I'm just saying that is so flat, but just I'm beaming. I can't say it properly.
Keep doing
Thank you.
Keep doing your thing, MK.
Gotta keep doing it.
All right. I think 3.5 hours later that we will call this a show. We want to thank you all for joining us on this episode of The Black Room. We are very, very excited to do more of these shows more often now that I think both of us are in a slightly better place mentally to get together and be frivolous, which hasn't been the easiest thing to do in recent times.
No.
For reasons obvious and otherwise. But it was fantastic to be back with you, MK, and you, listeners, and we want to do it again soon. So until the next episode, we want to remind you that you can find us and all of the links to the show at callidus-mc.com/podcasts. And you can also find links to myself, Madam Kistulot, on the socials if you want to come by and say hello to us. Of course, check out Madam Kistulot at the Erotic Mind Control Story Archive. Check out me at the Erotic Mind Control Story Archive. First episode, I've been able to say that. Woo! And you can also find MK at madamkistulot.net. And until next time, we encourage and await and look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions. We'll be back again with another episode of the Black Room Podcast, talking about all things erotic mind control. Until then, farewell.